perfect. All right. So day number one of the funding bootcamp is going to be heavily on talking about onboarding processes, okay? For those of you who may not know who I am, my name is Clarissa, and together with Javi, I'm his partner both in life and in business. Together, we've helped already over 400 credit and funding companies scale by implementing the same system that we use to scale our own funding company. Together with the team, we decided to create this bootcamp to give you guys more of a visual or representation of how you can deliver on the service that we are all selling today, right? So today, what we're going to cover is the onboarding process, okay? We're going to go both from the technical side, so all the techie things that you need to have in place in order to successfully onboard a client, as well as how to set up the expectations with them. Please, guys, make sure that you're muted, okay? Beautiful. Now, there's this quote that the first time that I heard it, it impacted me, and is that the day that you close a client is the day that you start losing them. And what do the people mean by this? It's basically like the day that you start working with a client is already the day that they start judging you and your company. So you might always lose a client. It doesn't mean that just because they close the first day, it means that they're going to stay forever, right? And they're always going to be impressed and like either you or your business. So you always have to think whenever you're working with a client, you always have to think that it may be the last time that you talk to this client, right? Like we don't want to think about bad things, but we mean like if you were to stop working with them, did you deliver on the process as best as you possibly could? Right? How was the presentation? What was their idea of you, your team members, or your company in general, right? So one key note that I want you guys to take home today is that the day that you close a client is the day that you start losing them. Okay. So the fastest way to lose a funding client is normally not about getting them denied or taking too long on the process or charging too much. It's normally about improper onboarding and setting up the wrong expectations from day one. I watch a lot of companies losing deals their first week, not because they couldn't deliver the result, because they even got into that point, but just because they were butchering the expectation process from the start. So what we're going to cover today is going to be how you can automate the onboarding sequence, the onboarding forms that you need, the onboarding call, and how to set up the proper expectations, having a sales success team alignment, and then if you're going to be doing this as a solo or as a team, okay? So majority of the time, the root problem of setting improper expectations starts within the sales process, because the sales process a lot of the time is already sabotaging your success. Okay, majority of the time, what happens with closers? This won't be an issue if you're your own closer, but if you already have a team, actually, like if you guys could put me in the chat, number one, if you're closing your own deals, number two, if you already have a closer. Just want to do a quick poll and see where we're all standing. So one, if you're closing your own deals. Two, if you have a closer. Okay, cool. Okay, majority of the people are closing you guys are your own closers. Okay, cool. So maybe this part won't make too much sense for you guys right now, just because you're closing your own deal. So you're already controlling this part. But for the future, this is a problem that you guys most likely will end up having, because I did, and a lot of other my clients did. And that is that the closer is over promising throughout the sales process, just because they want to make the close. Because at the end of the day, what happens is that a closer's job is to close the deal, right? And I guess maybe this one is something that you guys can take in consideration too. If you're hungry for the sale, you want to make sure that at least the person is fundable, right? Because if you're over promising throughout the sales call, and then when you actually review their credit profile, you notice that the person is not closable, then you're already setting up yourself for failure, right? Because realistically, if their credit profile doesn't allow them to be even funded, not even $1, then you're already setting yourself up for failure on this case. So what you would want, like, why do sales team normally overpromise? They want to make sure that they're making the close just to get a commission, because they're hungry for the sale. They may have a lack of credit knowledge, so they may not know the product itself enough. So they're not even doing it like out of malice. They're doing it out of lack of knowledge, right? And then there's nobody controlling them. So we need to be doing quality control. Us as the owner, we need to be doing quality control throughout the sales calls to make sure that they're not over promising throughout the sales calls. Now, how can we actually solve this overpromising issue? Number one, The problem is majority of the time the setter already, because if they're not qualified for funding, why are they in the sales call in the first place? If you go back to what we were saying before, the main thing, the main job of the closer is to close the deal. So why did the setter put in the calendar a person that wasn't supposed to be closed in the first place? So majority of the time, the problem is more on the appointment setting more than the closer's fault, right? So we want to make sure that the setter, whether you guys are doing a DM strategy or going direct to the funnel, the setter is supposed to be either not book a call or canceling the call, right? If the person is not qualified. So if you're doing the DM strategy, you would want to make sure that they're responding to all the questions before we send the link. And if you're doing the VSL, after they booked the call, if they lied in the application, they were able to get to the calendar, the setter is supposed to call them and make sure to review the application with them to make sure that the prospect is actually fundable, okay? Then you want to train your rep with product knowledge. So they should have a basic, not a basic understanding, I think they should know just as much as your CSM team on what the funding requirements are, right? Because they need to make sure that the person that they're closing is fundable, right? And then we want to implement a sales call quality control. So we want to make sure that we are actually reviewing the sales call. So if there was a case where there is overpromising, we can be proactive instead of being reactive, okay? So we can fix it before it becomes too much of an issue, okay? So when we're pre-qualifying for the setter, just like I was saying before, we want to make sure if we're doing the DM strategy, we are doing a initial DM, initial vetting, right? So if you guys are, I mean, Inner Circle has access to everything, so there's not an issue for Founders Academy members. If you're in the premium version, you can get access to all of our scripts on how you can vet the clients in the DMs. And as well, you have it also for the direct to funnel. So like I was saying before, for the DMs, you want to only send the link to people who are fundable, right? You should not be sending a link if they're not fundable. And for the direct to funnel, as soon as they book, you want to call the lead immediately and then review the application to make sure that the person is fundable, okay? Next, we want to make sure that the closer is trained. And if you're doing your own calls, you want to make sure if it's the first time that you're doing funding, then you want to make sure that you have a clear understanding on what are the criteria that categorizes a person to be as fundable. Okay. So if you have a closer, you want to make sure that they know the credit analysis, they want to have some funding product mastery, and then setting realistic expectations throughout the call. Now, to set up a sales call quality control system, you would have to basically monitor what are the main red flags that that a rep could be saying during the calls. So number one, what you want to do is obviously record every single call. And even if you're doing your own calls, you should be recording every single one of the calls because that's the biggest tool that you can have for yourself to perfect your pitch and your closing methods. You will want to review at least 20% of them and flag any overpromises. And then obviously you will want to retrain the reps if they always do them and adjust commissions if they are always doing these mistakes. Now, obviously, like we said before, don't close unfundable clients. Don't make this mistake to accept money just because you want to make the sale, right? You want to only close people who are closable. So unclosable profiles are credit scores below $600, 600 credit score, recent bankruptcy, multiple recent charge-offs, other collections, no legitimate business operations, and that basically that their expectation can be managed. How many times does it happen to you guys that someone wants to get funded and they want $1 million and they make less than $500 a month? They don't even got operations. That's not realistic for us to be able to do, mostly on just 0% business credit cards. So how can you actually automate the quality control with AI? So every single one of you guys have access to our AI tool. This is something that you guys can use to review every single one of your guys' calls. So what you would need to do is make sure, like we were saying before, to record your sales calls. You can grab the copy of the script, of the transcript of the call. You can paste it into our sales call analyzer, and this one is already trained on reviewing all the red flags and telling you if one of the reps overpromised throughout the calls, and as well as telling you what you should have done in order to close the deal, right? So you can do this with our AI tool. Now this one, it will still be some type of manual process, right? Because you need to go to Fathom, copy the transcript, paste it here, and then it will give you the response. For all premium and inner circle members, right after the funding bootcamp is done, so basically next Monday, we're going to have a new curriculum that is coming out. It's called the AI Agents, and in here I will be teaching you how to set up a AI bot that automatically reviews every single one of your guys' sales calls the moment that you finish them. So you wouldn't have to do the copy and paste anymore. The moment that you finish your sales call, it will automatically tell you everything that you did wrong, everything that you did right. So whether you have a team or you're doing this for yourself, you can have it there, and it will also automatically leave notes into your guys' CRM. So you don't have to put the notes. So again, this is only for Inner Circle member and premium members, and it will be available next Monday. Next, again, this one, I'm gonna go a little bit through this one faster because majority of you guys are doing this yourself. But if you have a team, you want to make sure that you have a proper handoff process. What does that mean? Is that basically every single time that you close a client, your closer is giving notes to your client success coach, so that it has a general understanding of what they promised to the client, and general information about the client. So where are they based off? What's their business? What do they want the money for? Because we all probably know this pain. You know, have you ever had to call the bank and you had to explain everything, and then they tell you, okay, I gotta redirect you to another department. Then you gotta explain everything. Then they redirect you another time. You gotta explain everything. That's exactly what we don't want our client to feel. So we don't want to have our client feel that the closer hasn't talked to the client success coach. Drop me again a 1 if you're doing your sales calls and you're also onboarding your client, or drop a 2 if you have someone like for the other position. Okay. Okay, we have a mix. We have some people that are doing everything solo and some people who have a team member. Perfect. Okay, so for the people who already have a team member, what you need to implement is the handoff process. So basically, you would want your sales team to communicate with your client success team. So they need to have a report where it gives you all the details about this client. So when you're doing the onboarding call, you can start the call with more of a personalized approach, right? And they don't feel like they're talking to a brand new person that knows nothing about them. Okay. And the good thing is that if you have our AI tool, it can review those calls as well. And if it recognizes that it was actually a closed call, it will create automatically the handoff process document for you. Now, let's talk about the simple. I like the people in Inner Circle can confirm this, but you guys know that I always like to show first the simple way, and then I'll show you the complicated way. Okay, so this is the simple way of the overview of the onboarding process, right? So a client signs the agreement. They are going to receive an email and a text message with the onboarding instructions. After the onboarding instructions are basically to fill out the onboarding form, and then the client books the onboarding call. Okay, this is the simple overview of how the automated onboarding process should look like. Does that make sense? Thumbs up. Make sense? Everybody follows? Perfect. Okay. So this is the kind of more complicated onboarding review, process, and I'm going to open it up into another page so that we can go through it and review it all together. So is this big enough, guys? Yep, perfect. So the moment that the client signs the contract, which if a majority of you guys already have are in our custom CRM. If you don't have our custom CRM, you can go ahead and sign up for it. You guys have it in the communities, or if you already have your own, for example, for the Founders Academy members, you can go to the curriculum where it says funding contracts, and you can get a copy of a template of our contracts, both if you're doing a done for you or a done with you approach. Now, if you're already part of ours, you already have, if you go to payments and you click on documents and contracts, right here, you will have the template of the agreements that you guys can use for your clients. So the moment that someone signs this agreement, we already set up an automation for you guys. And what happens? First thing that happens is that you're going to receive a Slack notification, right? So as soon as you receive the Slack notification, is basically telling you, okay, this person just signed an agreement. So we want to have basically first, last name, signed, total amount of the agreement, right? And this one basically what allows us to do is to monitor that the client is doing all of this process. So if we receive all of these notifications, then the client is moving throughout the pipeline smoothly, right? And also because we all want to have the lifetime freedom, right? So we want to all be able to know everything that is happening just off of our phone, right? So first thing, we're going to receive a notification. Then we're going to basically transfer our client from the leads pipeline to the funding client pipeline. So if we go to the example here, right here of a like a dummy account of our go ahead level account, right? We go from the leads pipeline, they will become a funding client pipeline. So they will get onboarded right here. It will be in step number 1, and this is basically the welcome email sent, right? So to go back right here, we're going, basically what starts is this workflow right here that we already built out is workflow number 7, close the client that they signed the contract. Okay. So what does this do? It does, it adds a tag. So it tags the client as a new client. We have it divided for both done with you or done for you. And as you can see right here, we go to a condition and it will send a different email depending if it's done with you or a done for you client. And then it starts the workflow for the email and text messages, okay? So it would be the number 1 inside of the client pipeline. Now here, what it's going to do is going to send the welcome email and a text message that tells them, hey, you just received your onboarding instructions in your email, go and check it out. Now, how does the email look like, right? So you will go to the email marketing, and then right here, you're going to have the funding welcome email, and for both the done for you or the done with you. The onboarding instructions are simple right now, but you can modify them to whatever you want the process to be, right? So the first one, the main thing that you would want to do is obviously add your logo if you haven't done it already. The location name will automatically populate with whatever you guys have put in the business information, and it will give them the first step prompt, which is to complete the onboarding form. Okay. So basically, this is how the welcome email at first looks like, okay? The moment that they're going to basically appear right here as a first step. Does everybody follow? Yep, perfect. Okay, make this a little smaller. Okay, so once they receive this onboarding email is basically the first link is of this onboarding funnel, okay? In this onboarding funnel, we have basically 3 steps, okay? We have the form, the onboarding form, the onboarding calendar, and a thank you page. As you can see, we have it for both done with you, done for you, whatever, depending on which process you guys are doing, okay? The main difference is just changes the form that is inside, okay? So they receive first the onboarding form, they fill out the onboarding form, they go to the calendar, and then they go to the thank you page. How does that look like? So you guys can do this with or without videos. I recommend doing it with videos. It just looks more professional, but it can work also without. So basically the first page of the onboarding funnel would look something like this. So just it would have the form inside.
And it's oh.
Okay. Perfect. Sorry about that, guys. So we're going to have the first one with the form, right? This form is going to ask personal information, business information, basically everything that we need in order to create a funding game plan. Okay. So it's going to ask all the questions, and then thank you, Will. And then I would do a video. I will have an onboarding video. If you guys have gotten onboarded by me on the Inner Circle platform, you know that I have a whole sequence of onboarding video where I cover the main things that we always talk about. So how to reach out to support, how does the process work, what are their next steps. I would have an onboarding video where it explains and outlines all of those things, so you don't have to repeat your process to repeat the process every single time, right? I will still there outline the expectations as well, but the expectations I will still want to say them again in during the onboarding call. But you guys can do this with a video or without a video. The moment that they fill out this onboarding form, this workflow will start. Let me zoom in. Which is the number 2 inside of the client pipeline, which this one basically says that the moment that they submit the survey, they're going to find or create the contact, and then is going to add notes to their profile, and is going to move them into the pipeline. So basically, they were right here before, they get moved to onboarding form submitted right here. Okay, that happens automatically, and then again, we want to receive a Slack notification. So we're going to receive a Slack notification with the name and last name of the person, and it tells you that it just filled out an onboarding form, okay? And you can go and review their responses inside of Go High Level. Where do you see that? So when you open up a client, so you will open up a client inside of your CRM, in the bottom, you will see onboarding process, and right here, you will see all the questions answered, okay? So everything stays all into one place. So normally, if you went through the same thing for our sales process, right here you will have the funding application, which is what they filled out to book the sales call, right? So you will open up with that one, and you can see there everything that they put in the sales call process. And then for the onboarding process, everything will be shown right here. Okay. Then next, they're going to obviously book their call. So it goes into the onboarding call event. And again, a new trigger will start, which is already built, trigger number 3, which this one is whenever the customer books the appointment, it moves them. So they were here, they got moved here once they submitted the form, and then they get moved into the onboarding call booked the moment that they book. Okay. And then again, just like before, we're going to receive a notification that someone just booked their onboarding call and when is the call for, right? And then it moves them into the stage of the pipeline. Afterwards, they go into the thank you page, which again, this one, you can do it with or without the video. This video can be very simple. It just thanks them to book the call. It thanks them that they booked the call. And it tells them that they're going to be there, take care of them to review their credit profile and etc. Right? And then that's it as far as like this process right here. This is basically the automated onboarding process of everything that happens. If you're part of our CRM, you already have access to all of this. So you wouldn't have to build any of this. You would just need to modify it and put your own branding to it. Okay. Next, did that make sense? Is there anything that I need to clarify on that, or did that make sense? Everything good? Okay, cool. So what happens actually during the onboarding call? What do we want to cover? How we're supposed to structure it? What do we give them? What do we don't? Will, could you please take care of that last message, please? And then, so what happens during the onboarding call? The things that we want to cover during an onboarding call is obviously at first we want to welcome them into the program, right? We want to thank them for having their trust of their business into our hands in order to be able to fund them and scale their businesses. We want to outline how they can contact support. So what are the times that we're going to be responding? Is it in between 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever the case may be? And where can they be reaching out to us? Is it through message? Do you guys have like maybe a community where you put them inside to, whatever the case may be? You want to outline how they can reach out to support. Then we want to set the response time expectation. So, like normally what we do is within 24 hours, Monday to Friday, within 48 hours for Saturday and Sundays. But if they have a 911 emergency, then we would ask them to type 911 and then ask the question so that we can get to them faster if it's during a weekend. And then we want to manage the expectations, right? Because one thing that happens is that we, majority of the time, set expectations based off of what the client wants, but not what the clients actually can be approved for, which we're going to talk about it in more detail in a second. Now, we want then, you guys can do this two ways. So this depends on how big your guys' team is, right? You can either take the onboarding call and just do it like a welcome call and setting expectations. And then you would do another call where you can show them the game plan. Now, if you're a leaner team, maybe you're even solo team, during the onboarding call, since you already have all the answers from the onboarding form, then you can take this call where you also already present them their funding game plan and everything that they need to be doing. We're going to talk tomorrow with Will, everything on how you can review their credit profile and build the funding game plan. But again, just to recap, you can either do the onboarding call where you're just welcoming them and setting the expectations, or you can also already deliver the game plan to them, okay? And then you can give them any next steps if there's anything that which goes back to the game plan. The next steps will be anything about the optimization if there's anything that they need to do. And then the most important thing is that you should already introduce a referral program to them during the onboarding call. So this one, you would basically tell them like, if you have any other business owners that can benefit from the same offer that you're in right now, we do offer a referral program where we set the fee. Normally, what I always recommend people is to have a referral fee that is the same as your guys' cost per acquisition. Everybody in this call should know their cost per acquisition, okay? So if you're running ads or you're paying for leads or in whatever way, you need to know what's your cost per acquisition, and that should be your referral fee, okay? And then, so what are the actual biggest onboarding mistakes? And is what I was saying before, is that we focus too much on what the client wants and not what their credit profile allows. So someone could come in and tell you, oh, I need $150,000 at 0%. And we tell them, yeah, sure, we could do that. But then we review the credit profile. He has a super thin profile, and we realize that realistically he could get 50 to maybe $75,000 tops. And we all know that the banks are also getting more strict, so the people who want the most sometimes always get the least, right? So we want to make sure that we are setting up the proper expectation and we are quote unquote promising what their credit profile allows and not what the client actually wants. Okay. Because it's not about what they want, is what their credit profile allows. Right. So if their credit profile, let's say that it supports $75,000, that you should be setting expectations to that they could get from 50 to 75, because when you are then delivering 75 or more, then you're exceeding your expectations or meeting them at least, right? How many of you guys have said always yes to a client to whatever number they wanted? Drop me a one if you ever done that. Yep. And how many times did that pay off? Almost never, right? Because again, it's not about what they want, but it's about what their credit profile allows. So something else that we want from our clients during the onboarding process is a transparency requirement. Why does this matter? Is because what we want is the client to be fully transparent on anything that has happened in the past from their credit profile. So anything that they have possibly either never hit their credit report or that they removed it to credit repair before they talk to us, right? And that we are completely not aware. So something like previous bankruptcy that were removed, charge-off that were deleted, collections that were paid and removed, previous denials from banks, and any closed accounts due to non-payment that they were able to remove from their credit profile. The reason why we want this is because while they can remove it from a credit report, the banks are not automatically going to be forgetting about this, right? And all of these things is things that we need to take in consideration when we're building out our funding game plans, because it can ultimately hurt their results, right? And if we are not aware, we can account for it, they're going to get denied and they're going to blame us, right? So that's why we need to have a transparency requirement from our clients. So this is something that you should be adding to your agreement. And for anybody that is in the call, even my inner circle members, this is something that I'm adding new. So this is something that you would want to copy and add to your current agreement. So this is basically a transparency and full disclosure agreement. So basically it's telling us that the client needs to fully disclose anything that has happened in the past from their credit profile that either never hit the credit profile or they removed from the from credit repair. Sorry. And in order to save ourselves from like, okay, but how do we actually know if they did it or not, is by adding the denial letter requirement. So basically, anytime that a client were to be getting a denial, right, we would want to ask first for the written letter of denial, because this is going to outline the issues that they had in their credit, and we're going to be able to identify if it was something that we have missed or is something that they missed us and they didn't tell us, right? Because like this, if they already know that this is a thing, they're going to be more inclined to be transparent with us. Okay? Because ultimately, what we want to make sure that they understand is that we're their partners in this, right? We want them to have good results. Mostly if there's still some people here who are solely relying on charging percentages, right? And a success fee. Because the like the lowest that they get approved, the lowest that you are going to get paid. So you yourself want to make sure that they're getting approved for the most, because you're going to be able to get paid for the most, right? So we want to make sure that the client is as transparent as possible with anything that has happened with their credit profile, whether it never hit the credit report or if they removed it through credit repair process. Okay. So what is the actual expectation setting framework? We want to obviously first analyze their credit report. So before we do the call, the onboarding call, if we're going to present already if we're going to already present their game plan, we want to make sure that we did already a deep analysis of their credit profile. We want to check all the credit scores across all the bureaus, utilization levels, account mix, histories, and so on and so forth, which tomorrow Will is going to be covered in great details. And then we're going to always under promise and over deliver. And we want to set the proper expectations for time management, right? So if your process normally takes, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks, you want to make sure that you're telling the client that it will take 4 to 6, okay? Because if it gets done faster, they're going to be happier about it, okay? Okay, so basically, again, just to do a recap, And within 24 hours, immediately post sale, we want to send them a welcome email thanking them for their trust, having them set up an onboarding call. And mostly, if you guys are doing, if you're doing your own sales and your own onboarding, during the sales call, you want to make sure that you're going from a call to a call. What do I mean by that? You want to make sure that you're finishing the call while they are booking their onboarding call. So you want to stay on that call until they have at least the link where they can book the onboarding call. Okay. So they don't feel rushed and they don't feel like you were just there just to get a yes and the paycheck, right? So you want to make sure that you're walking them through the process so that they can get onboarded smoothly. Okay. And then in week one, we're setting up basically their foundations, right? So we're checking their credit profiles, making sure they understand where they can contact for support, the setting up the proper expectations, and then we're going to have the ongoing communication with them. Okay. Now, how can we actually handle difficult onboarding conversations, right? So if the sales were overpromised or they were set the wrong expectations during the sales call, or okay, sorry, I received a notification there. Or if we then find that maybe they need credit repair after we already closed them, because that can happen. How many of you guys has it ever happened that we found that there's like multiple collections after we closed the client and they told us that their credit score, that their credit report was super clean? Ever happened to you guys? Well, I don't know about you guys, but it happened a couple of times to me. They have 700 plus credit scores and they still had things in their credit report. Maybe even just some simple late payments that they were only a couple of months old. That happens and that will hurt our process, right? So in order to handle those conversations, what we have created is a checklist and a basically like with the response framework. So here are some examples, and after this call, you guys are going to be able to get all of them, right? So for example, if when there is a sales overpromise, what we can tell them is that I've completed a thorough analysis of your credit profile, and I need to have an honest conversations with you. Based on your current profile, we're looking at 75 to $100,000 in funding, not the $300,000 that were discussed during the sales call. I know that this isn't what you were expecting, and I apologize for the miscommunications. But here is what we can do. And then you will go into basically like the optimization process that you can have with the client in order to be able to get him as close as possible to the goal that they initially had, right? And same for the people who ask outrageous amounts and they're not going to be able to get them all through a 0% to 0% products, right? So I understand that you would like to have like $500,000 all at 0%, but that is not possible, mostly with your current profile, right? So we will have to go through an optimization process and we will need to explore different products other than 0% funding in order to be able to achieve that goal. So these are basically the products that we will go after. Okay, so right after this call, we're going to be able to have. I'm going to be able to give you guys a list of prompts just like this one in order to be able to handle difficult conversations during the onboarding calls. Okay. So this is basically your onboarding implementation checklist. We want to first everything fix from the root cause, which is most of the time the sales process. We want to qualify the clients before they hit the calendar and before we close them. We need to set realistic expectations based on their credit profile and then align what the funding team would have said as well. Don't close unclosable clients, unfundable clients. Record and review every single sales call for quality control. On day one, whenever we receive the payment, we want to make sure that we're sending right away our agreement so that then they can receive the welcome email with the next steps, provide access to the portal if you guys are using any of them, schedule the onboarding call, and start the credit analysis process. And then in the first week, we want to obviously review their credit, create their game plan, reset the expectations if they were over promised, and begin the optimization process by giving the to-do list to the client. Then ongoing, of course, we want to have weekly progress updates and any immediate application notifications if you guys are doing more of a done for you process. And basically, what you need to do is transform your client retention today, because the fastest way to lose a funding client starts with overpromising during the sales and continues with the improper onboarding, right? But when you fix both, you can create clients who are thrilled with results and become your best source of referrals. So basically, the key principle things to remember are going to always be monitoring the sales calls for any overpromising. Don't close clients who can get funded successfully. Set the proper expectations based on their credit profile and not their desires. Require full transparency about their credit history. Under promise and over deliver on everything, and align your sales team with your client success team so that they have shared goals. Okay?
All right, can you guys see my screen? I don't know why it's on that side. Can you guys see my screen? If you can, make sure you guys are on mute first off, before we get into everything, of course. And if you guys have questions, you can drop them in the chat. You can put a Q in the chat so we'll know if you have a question. And I might ask you to drop a one or something like that in the chat, since everybody will be on mute, just to kind of get a feel for where you guys are at on some of the things. So if you can see the screen properly, you guys drop a one in the chat so I can know you can see everything. Chat. Okay. All right, good, good, good. Everything's good there. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get into it. So as you know, today is day 2 of the funding bootcamp. I'm Will. If this is your first time running into me, maybe you're new or whatnot. And I'm head of funding for Javi and Clarissa over at ATMA and for the Funding Academy. And the company has helped over 400 credit and funding companies scale past 7 figures. And the team decided to create this bootcamp to give you guys a more visual representation of how you can deliver on the service that we're all selling. So today we're going to dive into the strategy day, which is basically mastering, dissecting a credit report, finding the key funding factors that are within it, and putting a plan together that maximizes what your client walks away with, which is, of course, one of the most important things that we have to do while we are helping our clients. Got to get them the money they're looking for, right? So let's go ahead and dive into it. So today's focus in strategic roadmap, as we somewhat mentioned already, is going to be credit profile mastery. So basically deep diving into the key metrics that affect funding eligibility, how to put together a game plan that's going to actually work for different client scenarios, and state-by-state resources. So you're going to get access to a card database and a evergreen sequence, which we'll talk about as soon as we get a little bit further into things. So this should be very impactful for you guys. Now, as we're going through some of these steps, I want to point out how when you're within your CRM, you can move, or like where you would be moving your clients to as we're going along in this. Now, in the CRM, if you guys have our CRM, then you'll, have access to this pipeline already, but it's going to be a matter of some of the things will automatically move, and sometimes you might have to manually move a client. So at this particular point right here, and it could be different depending on how you're set up in your, business, but an onboarding call is booked. And basically at that point, you've already talked to the client, and they've, signed up and everything. They've submitted their information on a form, the onboarding form, and basically that collected everything that you needed to do the things that we're about to do. So where the arrow is, that's where your client would be at that point. So this is at the point where they book the call. Some of you guys, you might have it in a somewhat of a different order. You might not have a separate time where you talk to the client after the onboarding, or a separate onboarding from an initial call. And you just need to keep that in mind when you are kind of looking at what the pipeline says and where and how you have things structured in your business. So just remember that. But doing it this way is basically they book the call, and then the call is going to come later, but you have the information that you need from that form that they filled out. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. All right, so first part, decoding the credit profile. So there are going to be some critical metrics that we need to be looking at when it comes to the credit report. Of course, everybody already knows the most important thing to everybody is going to be the credit score. And it just gives you a quick picture of what their overall profile might contain. And that's really just telling you if it's overall good or overall bad. And of course, that 700 plus is where we're looking at. As far as average age, this is something that a lot of people overlook, but it's very important to the approvals and what the client's score is going to look like as well. So it demonstrates the maturity of their credit. Utilization is very important, and that's pretty much how they manage their credit cards and whatnot. We all know that. Inquiries, recent pulls signal risk to some lenders. Negative accounts, we all know what those are, the collections, the charge-offs and stuff like that. Those definitely have a negative impact when you try to go to the lender. And as far as newest account, having too many new accounts can also be a red flag to lenders. So these are some of the things that we're going to dive into and explore a little bit more. So these are going to be the ranges that we're looking at, that we want to see clients at, to know that they're in a good place. All right. The best the more you do ahead of time, making sure that the client meets these things before you take them on, the easier the process will be As you know, as Clarissa mentioned in the call yesterday, just talking about how important it is to make sure that you're looking at all these things and measuring them before taking a client on, so you can get them the results they're looking to get. So credit score range, 750 plus, of course, is going to be the best. But even with the 700 plus score, the other factors are still going to matter, because there are other things that can still hold someone back with a 750 plus score. If a person is in between 680 to 749, that is like the bare minimum that you really want to go. Anything below 680, and you're really kind of risking it there with the client and their ability to get approvals or to get better limits. Anything below 680, you need to be focused on rebuilding for that client. So if you have a credit repair, company, make sure you're taking care of them in that sense. If you don't have a credit repair company, make sure you have somebody to send them to, so that they can get that worked on and keep up with them, of course, so that you can get them back when it's time for them to go. But average credit age, another important factor, very important. 5 years is optimal. 5 years plus is optimal. The longer the credit age, the higher the possibility of a person's score to be. And it also shows that the person hasn't been getting a lot of new credit as well. So that helps in their in how they look to the lenders when it's time for them to go in for approvals. 2 to 4 years is going to be good enough. And under 2 years, that's again kind of getting to that range where you're kind of pushing it. You can have someone get like approvals if they like at 1.5 years, but it can still be a rough journey trying to do it in, from that point. So you want to make sure that you're doing things that's not going to hurt their credit age. We'll get to that on another day, but just making sure that age is as high as possible is going to be the best for the client. Utilization ratio, anything from 3 to 10% is going to be top tier. That's what you want your clients to be at. Those single digits are where they're going to maximize their potential for approvals, limits, and everything. The danger zone is anywhere between 10 to 20%. In that 10 to 20% range, it's possible for them to go into a funding process and to get some approvals. But like I said, it starts to kind of get to the point where they might start getting lower limits, and some banks might deny them. So that's why you want to keep them in the optimal range. Anything above 20%, you don't want to go into funding yet with them. I've heard of some people, going into funding and having people above 20%, but it's not going to be the most ideal situation. Whatever you got your client, you probably could have got them a lot more had it not been for had you waited and had them got to a lower place. And as far as negative accounts go, of course, you want the profile to be as clean as possible, 0 charge-offs, 0 collections, no late payments, no bankruptcies, nothing like that. That's going to be the most optimal thing. If you have a client that maybe has 1 or 2 things, right? It's something that you might want to address, depending on what it is. Like maybe it's 1 collection, you still want it to be clean, but that's something they can probably maybe address a little bit quickly. If they have like 1 or 2 old late payments, that is something that can kind of fly under the radar, and they might still be able to get an approval or 2. But if it needs to be really old, like when I'm saying really old, closer to 2 years old is what's going to be the best. Anything between 1 year and 2 years, you might be risking a little bit, and you're probably not going to want to do it if it's less than 1 year old. And anything 3+ accounts that are negative like that, you definitely want them to prioritize getting credit repair, because that's going to be the most ideal thing before they go into funding. All right. Now, does everything that I said so far pretty much make sense? If any of this is new information to you guys, put a 1. If this is something you already knew, put a 2. Just want to see how many of you guys already knew this. This is, for the most part, pretty basic stuff right here. Okay. Okay, for the most part, 2s. That's good. So I'm glad y'all already on top of y'all game, and y'all learning a lot from the curriculum. Either way, I'm glad you guys already are familiar with most of that. So now we're going to talk about credit monitoring tools. This is going to be really important, because this is how you end up getting your client's credit report. There are several different ways, and I've seen people use several different services for this for their clients. Sometimes your clients already have some, sometimes they don't, and you need to recommend something to them. That's why this part is going to be important. So Experian.com is the easy, free way to get a FICO score and a full report from the bureau that most of the banks are going to check. So that's something that you want to go to, especially maybe if you see the client's report beforehand, they can get that for free and send it to you. But the good thing about it is the FICO scores, and it does daily updates, so it'll always be up to date. And as far as the cost goes, it can be the free version, or when you upgrade to adding the other bureaus to it and getting monthly updates with them, stuff like that, it can go up to $40 a month. My Score IQ, that's what I usually recommend clients to get with My Score IQ. They give FICO scores, they give monthly updates, and the cost is around it can be $24.99 a month to $34.99 a month, just depending on some options there. But that's what you're usually looking at with My Score IQ, or the client would be looking at that. Then there's Identity IQ. Identity IQ and My Score IQ are the same company. But with Identity IQ, you get Vantage scores. That's going to be the same thing on Credit Karma. That's not going to be the most accurate to what the banks are going to see. So you might not want to, go with that option. And some of you guys are in credit repair, so you probably have seen some of these, different options. So you've probably heard of some of these things before. As far as it updates, it does monthly, and the cost is usually around $31.49 when you go to their website. Now, and again, there's the My Free Score, Niles, and all of that other stuff. A lot of those other ones give Vantage scores too. So if you are using something else, you want to make sure that they do give you a FICO score so you can see the number that's closest to what the banks are going to be looking at. But you also get affiliate opportunities with these. Now, some people overlook this option, and they just have their clients go get the credit reports, but you could be making some money off of each report that you get for a client. It can be small, but it can also add up depending on how many people you're talking to. So most platforms offer revenue sharing programs for funders or credit repair specialists, whatever it might be, and you can earn anywhere from $20 to $25 per referral when you actually do this. So it's worth it when it adds up, of course, and it can create some passive income, while helping clients monitor their credit health. So that's something that you want to keep in mind joining some of the affiliate programs, and I'm gonna recommend one to you guys and give you an idea of what that looks like. So there's a company I use called Upsell Nation. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of them before, but basically they have a plethora of different options. They have the credit monitorings like My Score IQ, Identity IQ. They have loans, they have credit builder cards, they have a whole bunch of different things. And when you see the revenue sharing options, it's usually going to be something like this, where it's like 14%, 20%, 15% of whatever they pay monthly. And then with that, it's going to be a smaller amount that you get, but that's something that can grow if they keep it. If you choose an option where you, instead of doing a revenue share, you get paid a flat amount of money, then you can make just one lump sum amount every time a client signs up for a credit report. So it can be $25, $20, $22 for every client that just gets their credit report. So if you do this with clients that haven't signed up with you yet just to see their report, you can at least make something, and it can add up before you even see them as a client if they never sign up as a client. And instead of you waiting, maybe 5 months to get $25, you can get it all upfront at once. That's what I would recommend you do. But like I said, it's a company called Upsell Nation. I can share the information with you guys if you want it, but that's who I use for that. And you guys can make money off of your credit reports. So now I wanted to show you guys what some of the credit reports look like and where you can find the information that we need to see. When you go to the Experian website, they do a pretty good job of giving you everything up front that you need to see that we already talked about for the clients. You can see here the scores right there. It's a FICO. We got the utilization there. We can see the total amount of debt that the person has used and their total amount of credit limits. So we can get a lot of information just from, just this first page of looking at everything. I'm sorry, there's people in there. We can see how many accounts they have open. We can see their average account age, which this is the average credit age I was talking about. In like 11 years, that's really good. And just so you know, what I've noticed is people that have 10 years or more in average credit age usually are very easily able to get up to 800. They're going to be in 800, so everything else is clean. And that's why, they're at the 850. But basically, you can see how old their oldest account is. So these are some of the key things that we would need to see when we're filling out the game plan. And you can see all of that very easily on the Experian site. So now My Score IQ. This is where you would find that same information. There's an area called, FICO score ingredients. So when you come to that part of the credit reports, you can see all 3 of the scores. You can see for each bureau, the payment history, if they have all 100% payments. You can see what their credit utilization is. Now you have to click this button and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. You can see their average credit age right here. You can see how long it's been since they got a new account, and it was like 5 months ago in this instance. And you can also see credit mix. So you can see all of these important details just like you could on the Experian report right here. And you just click each bureau to see what it is on each bureau, because some of these might vary a little bit. But to see the amount of debt that a person has on their credit report or the utilization, you click there. And when you do that, it will, it'll pop up with this. And right here, it'll show you the total amount that they owe on all their credit cards and their utilization amount right here. So that's a very easy way to prevent yourself from having to go to each, credit card and calculate it yourself. The information is already right there inside My Score IQ. And also something that you can tell about a person early is if this person is going to have to pay down a lot of debt. one of the key things that usually holds people back as far as time goes in getting to funding is them having high utilization. A lot of times people have that. So if you check their report, you see they have a high utilization, and you see they have, $50,000 that they might have to get down to a portion of that. That's something that you might want to talk about with the client before taking them on, because maybe they don't have, 30, 40,000 to pay down however much they need to get this utilization down. So you might want to know that up front. All right. And another section on there is going to be the inquiries, right? The inquiries are very important because we need to know how many they have within a short time frame. And the inquiries on the MyScore IQ reports and Identity IQ reports is going to be at the bottom of the screen, right under all of the credit account information. But the most important area, and some people don't look at this properly usually, is going to be looking at the inquiries in the last 6 months. Sometimes, or a lot of times, people are just looking at the last 12 months or something different, but the only ones that really matter are the ones in the last 6 months. So you just want to identify what these dates are on the inquiries, and then also making sure to pay attention to what bureau they're on, because even though there are a bunch of inquiries on Experian right here, you have to look at and separate what bureau they're on so that that maybe one bureau isn't as damaged as the other. But that's all important what you want to know there. Now, in regards to the accounts that are on a credit report, I'm putting up an example of a revolving account to kind of show the important things that we want to look at when we're dealing with the revolving accounts. And just so I know, can you guys see this? Put it 1 in the chat if you can actually see this. I know this might be a little bit smaller, but I just want to make sure you can see it, or if I need to make it bigger. Okay. Small. Okay, one person said small. Looks like most people can see it, but I'll expand it in just a second, make it a little bigger. Well, does that doesn't make it any bigger. But
I will try to do Command plus, see if it
let me see.
no.
Oh, okay, that is helpful.
Yeah.
All right. So this is what was that? So this is a credit card, right? Some of the important things that we want to know, and most people should be able to identify, what type of account it is, that it is a credit card by looking at revolving. But another important thing that you want to look at too is that sometimes an account might look like it's revolving, but it might not be a regular credit card. It could be a line of credit, it could be a HELOC, and you want to pay attention to that just to kind of see why. Because if it's a HELOC, then it's not going to be counted in their utilization. So they can have a HELOC that's like maxed out, and it's not going to hurt what you need to do with them. So that's why I highlighted that, so that you would know to look there just to make sure of what type of account is showing up as, and you don't get scared if somebody does have a HELOC. Bureau code, and this is again MyScore IQ reports. This can show up different under a different title, kind of on different reports. But the bureau code on MyScore IQ, you see here it says individual account. When you look at that, this is the area that will tell you if it's an authorized user account or not. So if it says individual account, that means, of course, this is for that person. If it says authorized user, that means it's an AU, and you know that this account isn't going to help the client when it comes to approvals as far as utilization, credit limits. So you'll know to kind of discount this if it does say authorized user. Also, it could say joint account here. If it says joint account, that means that somebody else is on this account, but it is this person's account. So like this person added somebody else to their account, like maybe a family member, who knows. But just know if you see those, if it says authorized, then it's not going to count. If it says individual or joint here, then it is going to count towards this person's utilization that's going to help them, just so that you know that. The other important things that we need to know that we're going to end up putting on the actual game plan for the cards is going to be the date that it was opened. This helps us know if this person is going to exceed Chase's 524 rule, so that we can include, Chase in the planning. If they have too many cards open in a certain date, and lets us know how old their oldest card is too. So it helps us in a lot of ways to know what that is, and the last reported date. And again, this might have a different term on a different credit monitoring, but on MyScore IQ, it's the last reported date. This tells us when this card is reported, when it reports the balance to the credit bureaus. So if you need a quick way to just find that out without the customer calling to find out, or whatever other means, you can just look at this, and more than likely, it's probably going to be, if anything, a few days from this sometimes, but this is going to be close to accurate to what that date is going to be. And if we need them to pay down something, of course, we need to know what this date is. So those are going to be the most important things. You already know why you need to know the balance and, credit limit for utilization and all of that, and to see what their highest limits are. So, you already know that stuff. We don't have to dive into that, but that's what we need to know from each of the accounts and really the credit cards, right? So now we're going to get into the client funding game plan, all right? And we're going to talk about some different options that we have for that. Now, at this point, what we're doing is we can move the client over to the game plan creation for everything after we do everything that we're about to do, because now we're about to actually create the game plan. So when you're in your CRM, this is of course something that the CRM wouldn't know that you did, so you would have to manually move the client over. So make sure you move your clients over to the game plan creation once you have done this particular part for the client. All right, so what's inside the game plan actually is going to be, some of you guys may have seen this, and if you have seen the game plan in the curriculum, put a 1. If you have not seen the game plan in the curriculum, put a 2. Because I'm just wondering how many of you guys may have actually seen it or not. So if this will be, something that you guys are seeing. Okay, we got a few people that have not seen it yet. All right. So even if you have seen the game plan in the curriculum, have something newer for you guys that you guys are going to see. So make sure you're paying attention. But as far as what's inside the game plan, it's going to be the current position. So a snapshot of the credit profile for the key metrics that we talked about for the client is going to have the target goal. So, specific funding amount, timeline, expectations. It's going to have action steps so that we know the sequence that, the client's going to go through. It's going to have, card applications. So what cards they're going to, and ideally, maybe links to go to those particular cards. So those are the kind of things that you'll find inside of the game plan. So this is currently a sample of the game plan. But we have a newer version, like I said, that we're gonna talk about. But in the standard client game plan, this is what you want to use, internally in the company. And you can see here, we put the credit scores up here, and everything is labeled so that you know what goes where, the average credit age, the amount of accounts they have open, the increase within 6 months and 12 months. So you can really come here and get a good quick view of where this client is versus going to the credit report and trying to dig through it to find everything. And this is really helpful so that you don't have to keep going back to the credit report constantly unless you just need to see something that's updated and update this. Listing things like their banking relationships that they currently have, information that you would get from the onboarding form, what banks they currently use, do they have any business credit cards already, what is their funding goal? So all that information, putting that in a quick little snapshot where you can have everything that you need for a client to see, or if you have employees, it makes it easy for everybody to be able to see what this client is looking at, anybody that might need to work with them or touch their file. Now, when it comes to filling this out, it's going to be all manual, right? You have to go to the credit report and do all of the analyzing yourself. So I wanted to point this out in regards to the automated credit report analyzation that is within the ATMA AI. So all you guys should have access to this. So basically with this, every member that, has access to it, hopefully you guys checked it out yesterday after Clarissa showed you guys, how to use it for sales calls, but you can do the same thing for a game plan. So you can upload the credit report for the client and it will give you a thorough breakdown of what's going on with that client. And I think I have an example right here. So this was an upload that I did, and you can see that it gave a very thorough breakdown of utilization, what the inquiries were, what the particular credit cards they had, what needs to be paid down, what's the first thing you should pay down. So basically, it gives a very thorough analysis of the credit report and some steps to take to try to help optimize it if any of that is needed. And again, this is something that you guys all have access to. All you have to do is go down there to the funding strategy generator, and when you click the little thing in the paperclip, you can upload the credit report, and it will do that for you. Anybody that is in the premium membership in school or that's in a circle member, you're going to get access to the curriculum that Clarissa was telling you guys is going to be released soon. And with that, you'll be able to actually, from the onboarding form, it will automatically analyze that credit report for you. Because, as I mentioned, the clients will be submitting their info on that form. So instead of you having to manually go here and upload it, you can have that to automatically happen through the AI bots, which, again, will be for the premium inner circle members to get access to that. So just stay tuned for that when that is released, so you can take advantage of that. Now, more into kind of the game plan and what goes into it. This area is personal and business card lists, and it's for utilization. As you can see, you will go to the credit report, list out all of the client's credit cards, their balances, their limits, the open dates, the reporting dates that we showed. It tells you here how much they would need to pay down. If they do need to pay anything down, the total that would look like. It gives you the utilization percentage so that you know what that is, and you can play with this and see if they paid certain amounts down, how much the utilization will go. If they already have business credit cards, that's going to be important to know too, because if they already have certain cards, they might not need to go back to a bank for that same card, or if they have a maxed out card at a certain bank, might not need to go to that bank until they pay down the card. So you want to make sure you're getting that information too and putting it on here so you can know where they're at utilization wise and what specific cards they have at each bank. So this is also a part of the game plan that you want to use again internally while you are managing your clients. Now, this is the most important part of the funding game plan, because this is where we list, all the possible cards they can go to, average approvals, prerequisites, data points, all of that stuff. So you'll find this on the game plan as well. So steps that they need to take, NAICS codes that would be good to use, that are low risk, high reward. Again, different cards for different banks based on which bureau they pull. Average amounts you can see, data points that you would use. You can put the actual approval amounts that they actually end up getting, and any prerequisites that you need to do, like opening up bank accounts, getting transactions in, all of that stuff that you would need to do before actually sending them in to get funding. So you have all of that information on the company version of the game plan. All right. Now, this is what's newer that we're going to be implementing. So basically, this is a customer version of the game plan. So with this customer version of the game plan, this gives you something that you can give them that makes it a lot easier for them, eliminates questions that they might ask you, and just makes it easier for you and them. So that game plan, the customer version, will include things like, the snapshot that I showed you and the utilization of the cards, but these are some added areas that are going to be within that. So as you can see here, when it's time to optimize their actual credit profile, usually clients are going to have a lot of questions for you about how to make it happen. So right here, and this is a Canva document, right? So this is something you can go in and edit. You can put the tasks that you need them to do here. You can list those out. If they need to get a higher limit card because they don't have a card that's 10K or higher, you have a list of cards here, their average starting amounts, what they need to do as far as application wise, all of that information is here. If they need money to fund the business accounts because they don't have enough funds of their own, there are different loan options, what banks they pull, if they do a soft pull or not. I'm sorry, what bureaus they pull, if they do soft pulls or not, what to put on the application. So they have all that information right here. If their utilization is too high, this tells them where their ideal utilization should be for total and individual cards. It lets them know their options for lowering it, because there are different methods. They can pay now with their own cash, and there are other little tricks that they can do, like using a loan and other methods. Those things are all mentioned here. If they have too many inquiries, there's a separate page we're going to get to for that, but they have instructions on what to do when it comes to inquiries. And in regards to, like, if their credit age is low, recommendations for what they can do to increase their credit age, all of that is right here with links for them so that they can go and so they can know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and know how to get it done. And just to ask, does this so far, does this seem like something that would be beneficial to you guys as clients? Put a 1 if you think it would be beneficial to give them something like this, beneficial for the clients and for you as far as saving time. Okay, that's good. See a lot of 1s. All right, now this is one of the extra additions. So inquiry removal. Some of you guys, you do the inquiry removal because you do credit repair, but some of you guys may not. So this gives instructions for your client on what they can do to go ahead and try to remove those inquiries. For Experian, it's simple as a phone call. All of the instructions that they need to make that call, the phone number, what they need to say, what they need to do afterwards, some additional things that they might get asked, all of that information is right here for them so that they don't have to think about it, and you don't have to send them anything or explain anything else. With TransUnion and Equifax, it's a little bit different process that you can take to do this. Then you can see all of the information, all of the steps with a sample letter that they can send to the bureaus with the FTC report, so they have all of the details that they would possibly need to actually get this done as far as the inquiry removal. And of course, if you need to do anything to step in to help them with that, you can, but at least they have all of the information that they need. Now right here, funding sequence. This is similar to what you saw on the last page of the company version of that, where they had all the cards listed. So your clients might ask things like, what banks do I need to go to open accounts? These are all of the banks that you usually would need to put have them open up an account. So you can just delete off which banks you don't want them to go to, the minimum deposit that they need to put in there, if they need to make transactions, if they need to wait X amount of time. All of that information is all right here. When it comes to making transactions, a lot of clients have questions about, what those should look like, and how much they should spend, stuff like that. All of the details about what they need to do is right here at the bottom, so that they don't have any questions about how to make those transactions to manufacture the relationship with the bank. And of course, these are listed as steps. Each card that they will go to, let them know what the welcome bonuses are, the 0% terms, what the rewards look like with each card, if there's annual fees, and the average limits that they could get. So again, this is all put together to really give them all of the answers that they need so that they know what is happening next. And all you would have to do is come in here, delete what cards you don't want them to go to, based off of the banks you selected for them. And we're going to talk about that in a second. And yeah, so it will be more than one sheet that has the cards on it, and then you would just eliminate what cards you don't want them to go to. Just as simple as that. And this right here is just a results page. This makes it easy for them to track. And of course, you have this information on the company sheet that you would use. But you can list the cards here. If they got approved, denied, pending, they're requesting docs, the amounts they got approved for, and down here to total up to whatever total they ended up getting, so that you know the total amount they got funded, as well as what they got for each individual card. So again, all of this is just to make sure that they have something nice, easy for them to use while going through the process and prevent you from getting asked a bunch of questions. Now, this is a new document that we have for you guys too. One thing that is a major question that a lot of people have is, what banks to go to, as well as what banks are available per state. So we have a 50-state breakdown of all of the best 0% APR business cards available in each state. This is already going to be available to you guys in the curriculum. So you just have to go into the curriculum. A video is there explaining this with the access to this document. As you can see, it is listed out, as you can see on the left, by state. So you just pick what state that your client is in. It's listed out or broken down by what bureau they check: Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. You can see that it is 0% cards here, and there's also information here on best lines of credit. Now with these, you'll get the details on the 0% rates, the annual fees. There's a link to take you directly to each individual card that you see. And all of the cards for that particular bank will be listed. And there's some basic info here, data points, and just things to know before you apply at each bank, for each bank. So again, this is going to have all the 0% cards in that state for the major banks and some of the smaller banks, as well as some major or important data points, and it's separated by the need to know information, like if it's a 0% card or if it's a line of credit and what bureau they pull. So that hopefully will be very useful for you guys in your while you're helping your clients. Also, there's an evergreen funding sequence. It is the first page of this document. I had them separated before, but they're combined. So the very first page is going to be an evergreen funding sequence. What this is basically telling you a list of banks that you can go to for any client. The only thing you have to do is make adjustments based off of what state your client is in. And that's why it's attached to this too. You can see what state your client is in. You can know if you need to take some banks off or add some banks in. It has some basic data points on that sheet as well, and let you know how to pivot, based off of what's going on with your particular client. But that's, again, to help you guys know what banks you can go to for a client. And that's what's ultimately going to help you in picking what banks you want to go to for the client. And just to cover that, when you are, I'm going to backtrack here for just a second, just so that you guys can know this one particular thing. When you are selecting those banks, like when we are here and you're selecting banks and you're having trouble trying to figure out how to select a bank or what banks to go to for your clients, again, you have the evergreen funding sequence. But sometimes people get confused with this. Make sure that you start the process of eliminating banks by what banks are in the state that my client is in. So you can easily eliminate most of these banks just by what banks are not available in the state from my client. Then once you have that, you look at what banks does my client already have relationships with? Do they already have a personal account? Do they already have a credit card? Do they already have a car loan or a personal loan? Any relationship that they have on the personal side with any bank, you want to prioritize those banks if you see them on the list. So you're going to go to those banks. And then after that, If you see some other banks that, they give out good amounts, and you can look at averages on here, then you prioritize, okay, I'm gonna go to those banks. And then of course you'll look at inquiries. Okay, does my client have too many inquiries on TransUnion? Well, if they have 5 inquiries on TransUnion and we're struggling to get them removed, I know I need to remove these banks off the list, and we just need to focus on Equifax and Experian. So that's like the line of decisioning that you would do to try to select what banks you're going to go to for your client, and do it that way all the time to make it easy. Because the easier or the simpler you make the selection process, the quicker you can know what you need to do for your client. And there's a lot of information in the curriculum on this, but it's just, that's something that you want to do. Eliminate the banks that's not available in the state. Look at, prioritize the banks that they actually have relationships with, and then also, eliminate by inquiry count per bureau. Like, those are 3 simple things to do. And then, go for the banks that give the most money, and you're going to have good results for your clients if you do things like that. All right, now at this point, you have more than likely delivered the game plan for the client. You're about to deliver the game plan to the client, and you want to mark that in your CRM as game plan delivery once you do that, because again, the CRM isn't going to know that you delivered it, so you're going to have to go ahead and move the client along in the pipeline. So make sure that once you get to this portion, that is what you do with the client, that you move them along in the pipeline. Okay, so for today, just to recap everything, now, based off of what we covered with the credit reports, you should know exactly what the lenders are looking for and what metrics we need to optimize for. That credit score being 700 plus, that credit age being over 2 years, no negative accounts or negative marks, utilization between 3 to 9%. Those are the ideal things that we want to look for. You want to pick a credit monitoring tool and stick to it. Have your clients to always go to one. Sometimes they might, have a little bit of pushback about using a different credit monitoring, or they just don't want to do it at all. But you have to get the credit reports. So having a consistent one that you use is going to make everything simpler and easier for you to operate your business, and definitely make some money while you're doing that by signing up as an affiliate with the program, so that you can actually make some money while you're getting the credit reports for your clients. Make sure your game plans that you have that internal document for yourself to use, where you can make sure you're keeping track of everything, and make sure that you also get that client client game plan to them, so that they can eliminate the questions that they might have, and they can knock out some of the things you need them to do, because they have that document there to kind of guide them through it and take some headache off of you and make things easier for them. And they're of course going to perceive more value from your service with that as well. And make sure to utilize things like the state database and the evergreen sequence, so that you can kind of have an idea of putting a sequence together already done for you, as well as knowing what states, what banks you can go to in each state for your clients, and some additional, products outside the 0% that you can get for them. But that is what we learned today. Hopefully you guys got some value from it. Now, do you guys have any questions on anything? Now would be the time for that. And everybody put a 1 in the chat if you can see the screen. Put a 1 in the chat if you can see the screen. Okay, good. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. All right, let me move something over here. All right, so welcome to day 3 of the Funding Bootcamp, and today is going to be all about optimization. If you're new, I'm Will. I'm head of funding for Javi and Clarissa, and the company has helped over 400 credit and funding companies scale past 7 figures. The team decided to create this bootcamp to give you guys, more of a visual representation of how you can deliver on the services that we're all offering. And today we're going to dive into, as I mentioned, Optimization Day, where you're going to master the fundamentals of credit, business, and banking relationship optimization to unlock the maximum funding potential for your clients. All right, so the first thing I wanted to make sure that you guys kind of understood, because some of you guys might be, completely new to the funding space, right? The funding landscape has changed a lot over time, especially like the last 2 years, right? So banks, used to be more lenient with credit approvals, and what they look for. A good credit profile could get a significant amount of funding without, too much optimization, too much changing, too many extra steps. Optimization was, kind of optional. It was a nice thing to do. It could make things better. But when we look at how things have shifted and how things are today, it's no longer a nice to have. It's basically a necessity. Banks have tightened their requirements and what they look at quite dramatically. They want relationships over one night stands. So, it used to be you can just go to a bank and, just get what you were trying to get out of it. Now they want to see that you're more serious, that you're going to be more of a long-term customer, or at least they want to feel like that's what you want to do before they give you, the goods, give you the funding that you're looking for. So without proper optimization, even a good credit profile can still get denied. So even a person with 800, 850, they can still get denied if they don't measure up to what it is that these banks are looking to see in these days. So, again, 2 years ago, it was optional to optimize. Today it's essential, and that's why we need to go over what we're going to go over today. So for the roadmap for today and what we're covering, personal credit optimization, that's going to deal with the accounts, the age, the limits, the utilization. When it comes to the business profile, establish credibility within the business is what's going to help the most, using the proper codes as well as the credentials of your business, and business relationship strategy. So building trust and history in a strategic way so that you can still maximize the funding, but do it in the shortest amount of time possible to get the maximum amount of funding. So that's what the goal is with this. So there are 5 main pillars when it comes to the personal profile. Some of these things we mentioned yesterday. So the account total, how many accounts a person has on their credit report. Anywhere from 5 to 10 accounts is going to be a sweet spot. Anything less than that, and it's a little bit in the danger zone where they don't have enough accounts to kind of show to show that the profile isn't thin and to show that they have a stronger profile. Credit age, 5 years plus ideal, 2 years minimum on that. And, a little bit of a gray area between 1.5 to 2 years. When it comes to high limits, this is something that is also that's important for the banks to see. This is something that will be called comparable credit, which you guys might have heard of. Them having comparable limits to what you're trying to get is what they need to have in order to justify them giving you more money on those limits. Utilization, which we talked about, 3 to 9% collective. And that's all the cards total together, and then under 30% per each card. So even if their total collective utilization is between 3 to 9%, you don't want any individual card to be higher than 30%, because that also signals risk to the bank. And in case some of you guys were wondering, I don't think I mentioned it yesterday, why you can't be, at a 0%. In some clients you might run into, they try to keep their cards at 0. They want to have that 0%. They don't want to put any money on their cards. But when a bank sees that you have, 20,000 or 50,000 or even the 5,000 on your credit report and you're not using that, their whole goal is they want to know that you're going to use this card so that they can make profit off of the interest once the 0% runs out, and any fees or anything like that. So you using the card is how they make money. So if you're not using the cards that you currently have, that means you're probably not going to be using this card that you get. So it's going to look less favorable, and they can get denied with the 850 score, sometimes just because they have not been using their credit cards. So that's why having a percentage at least is going to be helpful for your clients' approvals, because you don't want them to get denied for something as small as that. And then we got a clean credit profile, which is obvious already. So the negative items on the credit report, making sure that the credit report is clean, and that's what's going to ultimately ensure that you maximize these 5 areas for the client. And that's why we're going to talk about how to accomplish these things on the credit report for the client. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about the account strategy. So having not only quality on the credit report, but the quantity that they are looking for to see. So the sweet spot, as mentioned again, 5 to 10 accounts. This demonstrates that the person has had a good bit of credit accounts, and that they have managed those credit accounts well if their score is good. Too few, and it's a thin profile, and again, it can cause you to go into the danger zone. But one thing that you need to do is add accounts, of course, if a client has too few accounts, but you have to be careful, because when you add those accounts, it lowers the average age of credit. So that's something that you have to be careful for. So building credit age strategically. The target that you want to have is 5 years. And depending on where the client is, it might be hard to get to that. But you can at least mostly get most clients at least to the 2 years, using this type of strategy. So the easiest thing to do is rent reporting services, and that can be added usually rather quickly to the credit report. Some report within a few days, some report like at the beginning of the month. So just getting some type of rent reporting, because almost everybody is renting, that can help to add age, because they don't just add the account from the day that they added it. They can add up to 2 years of credit history. And it used to be some was 4 years, but right now, from what I'm seeing, most of them are only adding about 2 years. So with the 2 years, that's still something to boost somebody up, especially if they just, like if they don't have any credit at all, this is something that can instantly add that 2-year minimum to the report. But you also want to keep in mind if they don't have anything, when you add something like a credit card, it's going to average out. So that one new rent reporting plus the one new credit card can balance out to like a 1-year average, right? So ideally you want somebody that has something on their credit report, but that's just to give you an idea of how that kind of works when you're adding these things and trying to build up the age with the number of accounts. Also, if they have older accounts, make sure that they have those older accounts, that they keep those active. The more older accounts they have, the stronger it builds up their average age and creates that resistance to the new accounts lowering their age too much. So the more older accounts they have, the better for maintaining age, of course. And just make sure that you're balancing out those things, how many accounts that you add in any situation. Ideally, you probably don't want to add more than 2 accounts. And I'm talking 2 brand new accounts, accounts that don't add, backdated age. Now, the only other thing that you can really do to add age is to get something like a primary. A lot of times people go to authorized user accounts because the authorized user accounts have been the go-to for so long. But as I mentioned, things have changed. So when you add those authorized user accounts, they are no longer counting the age of that account, the credit limit of that account, and the utilization of that account. So the main reasons that you would add it to the credit profile don't benefit the credit profile when you actually apply for something. It might make the credit monitoring report look good, but when you apply, it's not going to be counted. So versus an authorized user, if you find somebody that has primary accounts, that is something that can be used, and those can oftentimes be backdated as well for maybe about 2 years. So that's something else that can add to a person's credit report and help build up or strengthen their profile. And now that brings us to high limit cards that move the needle. So when you're trying to add accounts, you don't just want to, again, add a whole bunch of accounts. As I mentioned, you kind of want to be very, you don't want to do it in the shotgun style. You want to do this in the sniper style. You want to have a target and aim at those few targets and hit them versus trying to spread out and, do whatever you can with a bunch of accounts and then deal with the damage afterwards. So knowing places that you can go to quickly and easily get high limit accounts is going to be the best thing that you can do to save you and your client time and make sure that you're operating as efficiently as possible. So the target is 10K. If they can get a credit limit of at least 10K, they're going to be good. There might be some instances where you can't get a person 10K, maybe you can get them 8K, 9K. If you've applied for like 2 different places and you haven't got to the 10K, but you get close to it, you might have to just roll with that. But ideally, we're trying to get to that 10K. So one of the places that you can go to where you're guaranteed to get that 10K is going to be the Chase Sapphire Reserve. That is because it guarantees it has a minimal starting limit. Almost every credit card has a minimal starting limit, and that number is different for every credit card. But this one, we know it starts at 10K guaranteed. So if you can get a person approved for this, that's an easy win. The only thing about the Chase Sapphire Reserve is the annual fee. It's close to $800. So basically, there might be some clients that might not like that, but the workaround with that is that you can, after a year of having the card, and sometimes people think they have to pay that up front. So letting them know that it's going to get charged to the credit limit, if they don't know that, that might alleviate their concern there. But also if you let them know after a year of having the card, and again, they're going to charge the $800 to the limit, you can downgrade the card to a free no annual fee card like the Freedom. So they can do that after a year if they don't want to keep it. But that is just some ways that you can kind of help the client ease into this if they really need it. Another option with a guaranteed 10K starting limit is the Capital One Venture X. Now, I usually don't recommend Capital One cards to anybody because, well, on the business side, they report to the personal credit. So that's one reason. But like this is a personal card that we're talking about here, but Capital One is going to put an inquiry on all 3 bureaus. So because of that, I usually tell people I try to save this one in the back pocket just in case, we are unable to get anything else, then we'll go for this because we don't want to deal with the extra inquiries if we don't have to. But it does have that guaranteed 10K starting limit. And point wise, it's not a bad card either. But the next option here, it averages around 5K. I've seen it get to 10K. And a little bit higher too, but it's going to average around 5K. But it's worth trying for a very specific reason. And looks like my video froze, but can you guys still hear me? Put a 1 in the chat if you can still hear me. Okay, just wanted to make sure. So So I'm gonna keep going. You guys can hear me. The camera will come back in a second. So the Wells Fargo One Key Plus card. Now, this card is really good because even though it averages that whatchamacallit, the 5K limit, it can actually, you can see what the limit is going to be before you apply. I'm sorry, before you actually accept the card, right? So that gives it a really good benefit because now, before they get an inquiry, you can know if they're actually going to get this card or not. So that's very, very beneficial. And whatever they tell you the limit is when you apply, that's what the limit is going to be. Like almost 99.9% of the time, that is exactly what their limit is going to be. So it's very, very beneficial to try this. Now, there are 3 different ways to apply. So I was going to show you the way that I recommend people to normally do this, because you can go to the Wells Fargo website and you can apply. Outside of the Wells Fargo website, you can go to 2 travel sites. And just so I know, put a 2 in the chat if you've heard of this card before. Put a 2 in the chat if you've heard of this card before I go and show you guys that. Because I'm just gonna wondering if you guys have actually heard of it before. But put a 2 in the chat if you guys have heard of that One Key Plus card before. Okay, doesn't look like anybody's heard of that one. So let's go ahead and check that out. So the 2 places that you can go to, Expedia.com and I think is VRBO is the travel place that has like rental homes and stuff like that. That is the 2 places that you can go outside of Wells Fargo website for it. So what you would have a client do is go to Expedia.com, have them to sign in. It's free to sign up, so you can just have them sign up very easily. And after you do that, you would just have them to scroll down, and you really can't miss it. It is a little bit kind of hard to see, it kind of blends in there, but you would have them go right here. And when they click on this, it's going to give them 2 options, right? So they have the regular One Key card, and there's the One Key Plus that does have a annual fee of $99. But still, either way, this is going to be the one that you want to do. And again, it will be a soft pull, so they won't have to worry about anything actually hurting their credit until they see what their limit is going to be. So that's, again, one recommendation that I have for at least trying to see something before you get a hard pull somewhere else. Another thing that you can try is the Amex Hilton Honors. Now, the reason why this one is good is it's also going to be a soft pull too, that you can just check to see if they'll approve you. But outside of that, okay, the video's back. So outside of that, they also average around 10K. So this is going to be something good to have. Also, when you're trying to get a person one of the Amex business cards, you might have already heard that it's good to have a personal card with Amex before you do that. So this kills a few birds with a stone, because you can try to get a 10K limit. You can get something that's going to actually help them towards their Amex funding, and get the 10K limit. Now, the Amex Hilton Honors and also the Delta Gold card. So you can do one of these 2. Those 2 are going to be about the same, and that's the other option that you can try to get the funding going, get the higher limits going for your clients on their profile to build it up. Now, something else that you want to keep in mind that is sometimes not paid attention to as much is going to be the bank tiers. How many of you guys have heard of a bank tier system before? Okay, I can see. So basically with this, the higher tier banks are the ones that are going to look better on the profile. Tier 1s is going to be the best ones. Tier 2, they're still good, but of course they're not, the premium, the top tier. And then there's like Tier 3. Tier 1s are going to be basically the national banks, the biggest banks. These are Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citibank. Tier 2, bank, surprisingly, Amex is on there, Capital One is on there, KeyBank, Truist, PNC, US Bank. When you get to Tier 3, it's really going to be a lot of the credit unions, secure cards, credit builders, and those retail accounts. All of those, as you know, it can be easy to get a higher limit at a credit union or at some of the smaller regional banks, but they're still also not going to be considered some of the top tier banks. So they will help with like comparable credit, but of course they don't strengthen your profile as much as having credit from these other banks. So you want to keep that in mind, while you are helping guide the clients. And that's also why some of the banks that I mentioned first are those banks that are in the top tier. All right. Now, another important piece is going to be utilization and inquiry management. All right. So basically, you want to get the utilization down as far as we can. We all know that. Utilization targets 3 to 9% across all cards, 30% per card. And you want to pay it down strategically before the statement date. So always, I showed you yesterday how to see on a credit report when the reporting date should be. Also, they can check their statement or they can call the bank. When it comes to inquiry limits, what we want to pay attention to is not having more than 3 in the last 6 months. So make sure that you're paying attention to that number. That is going to be the most important. And then, when it comes to inquiry removal, there's already a script, as I showed you yesterday, to call Experian to try to get that removed, which is on that updated game plan that I showed you guys. And as far as the TransUnion and Equifax, there's an FTC report that you can do, and I had a sample dispute letter for you guys on there as well. So you know what those options are, and you know where to find those solutions to try to help your clients in that regard. So here are some ways that you can pay down utilization, or the client can pay down utilization. And one of these I'm going to go into more detail in because it takes a little more thought to actually do it. But they can pay down their card without any money. So request credit limit increases. That should be the first thing that you go to. So every 3 months you can apply for a credit limit increase. Or you should try to if you're starting with a lower limit. So that's what your clients can do too. If they've had a card for at least 3 months and they had not requested an increase, then you definitely want to tell them to go ahead and request an increase. That way, they're not lowering their credit age by adding a new card. And basically, you want to go for the cards that are probably older, the cards that are already close to a 10K limit, because it might be easier to get a small amount of the increase versus requesting a bigger amount of an increase on a card. And you also want to make sure that if they're going to do a inquiry or if it's going to be a soft pull for that, because you want to know if you're going to be adding inquiries to the credit report. And just so you know, if they get an inquiry from a credit limit increase, it is something that you can, have removed. It's not like when you get a brand new account and you can't remove the inquiry. You can actually have the increase from a increase removed. So that's something to keep in mind. But if you can avoid it, you want to avoid it. All right, now if you can't do that, the credit limit increases, then you might want to, open a new card. That's one option. We already talked about that. Making sure that you're focused on higher limit cards in tier 1 and tier 2. And, keep in mind that it could lower the credit age if they don't have a strong one. I would say if they have 5 years or more, you should easily be able to add 1 or 2 cards without it causing an issue. Maybe 3 if you have to, but you probably still don't want to do the 3rd one. But if they are close to that 2 years, then you might have to add rent reporting and stuff like that if you do get them more than 1 card to build up their limits, or I'm sorry, to lower their utilization. So again, that's one that you kind of want to have in your back pocket. Now, this is the one I'm going to explain more in the next slide, but strategic balance transfer. So it's basically you using the card that reports later to pay off another card that you use a card to report sooner to pay off a card that's going to report later, to try to time it properly so that you can get the utilization down. And again, I'll show you that in a second. But if you don't use any of these methods, the other way, that's also an easy win, if your client doesn't have super high utilization, is going to be using a personal loan to pay down their utilization. Some people get concerned, whether it be the funder or the client, in is the loan going to affect their credit in a way that's going to hurt them from getting funding? So you can, rest assured that the loan isn't going to affect them in a negative way when it does hit their credit report. First off, you have, probably 30 days before it hits. When it does hit, loans won't impact the credit as much as high utilization on a credit card will. So by the time you get the loan and use it to pay down the utilization, their credit is still going to see a major benefit versus any negative thing that you think the loan might do. So it definitely doesn't have a negative impact or hurt the client at all. Only instances might be is if they already have a high debt to income ratio and they add a big loan, that can happen, but I haven't seen that really be an issue, but that's the only thing that could possibly happen. But yeah, this is a really quick fix. And in order to do most personal loans, to pay down utilization, the client would have to be under 35% utilization with their current credit cards. And that's what I see for the Lightstream loan. If they're under 35%, then they're going to be in a decent enough place to get that Lightstream loan. Anything too much higher than that, and they're probably going to get denied just based off of that. There are some other loan options out there that might be a little more lenient, but most of them want to see that's not super high. And a person can owe a good bit of money on their cards and still get the loan because they might still be at a low percentage. If they have if they have 50,000 in credit cards, they can have higher amounts and still be at lower utilization, so the loan can still benefit them. And now just to give you that example of helping the client pay down the credit card technically without using any extra cash that they might not have available. This is going to be how you would want to do that. So we have two cards here. One of them reports on the 10th of the month. The other card reports on the 1st of the month. Now this card, the KeyBank card, has a $10,000 balance and the credit limit is 30,000. So it's at 33%. So of course we want to get that down. When it comes to the other card, the Wells Fargo, it's 3,000 balance, 30,000 limit. So that's 10%. So we clearly have, enough money over here on the Wells Fargo card to pay down this card, but we just want to do it in a strategic way. So basically what you're going to do here is when this card reports on the 1st of the month, we wait for it to hit the client's credit report that it has a 3,000 balance and a 30,000 limit. Then you take the amount of money that you need, which is about $7,000. You're going to take that from this card. You can do a cash advance, so you can liquidate the card, which would be you send yourself an invoice, so you send the client an invoice, the client pays it, and then once the money comes to you, you send the money back to the client, or it could be something you do for yourself, through your business. However this is done, cash advance or that way, you get that money off of this card after it reports on the 1st, and then you take that money to pay down this card before the 10th. And what that does is simply is going to allow this balance to be under 10% by the time it reports on the 10th. And then at that point, you have from the 10th until the next, until the 1st of the next month to do whatever funding you need to do for that client. Because once the 1st comes, this balance is going to show that 7,000, and then it's going to be back to the percentage that they were at. So if you can get this done in a timely manner, you can have a window of opportunity where they have low percentage, and you can go do your funding sequence, and you can get the client what they need. Or maybe you need to get a loan, and you lower the utilization to get the loan, and then do the funding. However you need to do it, or whatever you need to use it for. These are going to be this is going to be a strategy you can use if the client doesn't have any money. If they have a bunch of cards, it could take some, figuring out on which card to use and all of that. But it's very useful where you might not have many other options for the client. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the business profile and get into some of the things you need to optimize with that. So NAICS codes, they basically identify, they give the business its identity when a bank looks at it. So this tells the bank what industry they will classify the business in. And you've probably heard a lot about NAICS codes, finding, low risk ones and whatnot. So these are used because a lot of times people ask, like, where can they change their NAICS code? These are used when you're opening up your business bank account, when you're doing a credit application or a loan application. And also you want to look at this in your Dun & Bradstreet profile. But on the on the Dun & Bradstreet profile, it's going to be a SIC code. So you would, whatever the next code is that you want to use, you want to find the corresponding SIC code to use on Dun & Bradstreet so that it all matches up. So outside of this, you don't need to change your business NAICS code anywhere else. If your client already had a business account at a bank that you wanted to go to, and that you're still going to go to, then you might want to have them to call to change their NAICS code on their bank account. And then whatever they put on the application for the actual business credit card, they would use that new NAICS code on that as well, so that things match up and align. And some industries that are considered high risk can lead to denials and low limits, and those are going to be adult entertainment, cannabis, and CBD, gambling, debt collection, credit repair too, cryptocurrency exchanges, transportation, trucking, most things in real estate. There are some things in real estate that are not. So choosing a good code is going to be very important. I also created a list and put together a list for you guys that is attached to the old game plan. So I'll put it next to the new game plan, but I just wanted to show you that just in case you have not seen that. Can you guys see this list on the screen? Okay, so this is a list of the NAICS codes and SIC codes that correspond with the NAICS code. So you can see these different industries here. Now, what I did was, because a lot of times you might look at these descriptions and you think, oh, well, this business won't fit for this specific NAICS code. So I put over here that it covers these industries. So like for tech processing, hosting, and related services, if they have a tech company, a SaaS company, if they have CRMs, client portals, data storage, online dashboards, that's something that can be used. Something more specific, caterers, food services, mobile catering, meal prep, event food services, a chef business. So it's a lot of different industries that can fit in. There's other activities related to real estate support, business strategy in real estate, planning services, operations and consulting. So all of these different things can fit inside this. Now, the other thing that I added in here is the SBA size standard. The reason why this is important is because it can indirectly help as far as the amount of money that the client can get from this next code. So that's how I look at it. So in these particular industries, the SBA has a certain size standard that if it sees this industry, it assumes that industry makes this much money. The higher that number is, the higher, you should be able to get because of that. So that's why I listed this here, so you can kind of see the difference in the amounts, and you can see the higher ones are at the top. And 500 employees is how they rate the electronic shopping and mail order one. But 500 employees means that you are definitely making, close to the millions in here, but that's just the size standard that they put on this particular one. So just wanted you guys to see that this is kind of how I look at the next codes, having something that's low risk, knowing where you can fit somebody into one of these and what the likely, perceived amount of money they should be able to get. And of course, not to get the millions, but them being able to get higher amounts versus other next codes. So that's already in a curriculum. So you guys do have access to that. And under the video, once we post these, you'll see that as well. But let's continue. So you also want to make sure, and this is something that most of you guys kind of know, that the complete business information is consistent. You want to make sure it's consistent in a bunch of different places, right? So it's possible for the lender to check online to see if your business exists and find different pieces of information. And if they need to see that your address is the same, your phone number is the same, your business name shows up the same in all these different places. The main places that you want to have that consistent at is going to be 411, Yelp, Dun & Bradstreet, online directories like that. Search engines like Google for the Google business profile. I also recommend you put in some details on your Google business profile too, just to help out with SEO and stuff like that. But having your business information there is, of course, always going to be good because that's the first place everybody goes to search. Official registrations like the Secretary of State. So when you first file your business, making sure that the name, address, phone numbers that you put on those registrations, making sure that you're putting on that what you're going to put in these other places. And of course, that same information, you want to make sure you use that on the bank account applications when you're opening up the bank account. So make sure you're telling your clients that. And also on the credit card applications that you're putting in. So making sure that all that information is consistent, make sure that it does not cause any red flags once you go through the application process. Also, virtual offices. There are some banks that do not like virtual offices. So that's something that you want to keep in mind too. So Wells Fargo and US Bank, I've seen to be the most particular about that. I've seen Wells Fargo not allow somebody to open up an account because it was a virtual address, like just a business bank account. And in those instances, you might have to use your actual home address. So, with Wells Fargo and US Bank, you might want to tell a client to just go ahead and do that when they're using those, when they're doing those applications for bank accounts and for the cards, so that they don't run into any trouble. Because I've seen somebody at US Bank too, they wanted verification of like a bill or something at the address. And if you can't produce like a bill, then they'll give you a certain amount of time. If you don't get it done in that time, they could close the card and then you have to redo the whole application just because of an address. So it's better to just make it clean and just have them go into the door at Wells Fargo and US Bank. Just use the home address unless they actually have like a physical office location. So keep that in mind. All right. Now, as far as the banking relationship, all right, you got your business information for your client all together. Your client has all that together. The other part that's going to be important is this. And this is where you're opening up business bank accounts to start that relationship with a bank where required. And then maintain a certain balance. Higher balances equal stronger relationships. So, of course, there are minimum amounts that you can put in. But if you can have a client to put in, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, even if it's for the amount of time before you do the application and then until you're done with the applications, then that's going to ultimately help them with their chances on getting approved and getting approved for more because they see that liquid cash there. All right. And also, if you have personal connections with a bank, personal credit card, I mentioned this yesterday, personal card, personal account, all those things also help with the relationship because those are things that's showing them that, oh, you are already a customer. You're not somebody that's just coming in the door. Now, while having money in the account can help build a stronger relationship, they're also the fact now that a lot of banks are not stupid, right? They know that people will open up a bank account just to try to establish a relationship, just to get a quick win. So they would consider those usually ghost accounts where they don't have any transactions. That just basically means that the person, they just opened up the account, did nothing with it. That's why you want to, at some banks, have transactions in those accounts as well. What I recommend is that you use a business bank account. So what I recommend is that you use a business bank account. So what I recommend is using 10 transactions monthly. I'm sorry, not monthly, 10 transactions within a month or within a short period of time, like 2 weeks to a month, maybe. When you do this, it shows that you're actually using the account, but you need to do this in a way that looks like a person that's actually using the account. So what is the best way to do this? You want to use electronic deposits because they want to see money coming in and money coming out. So electronic deposits are going to be the best. You can deposit cash, but ideally you want to do it electronically. So that could be Zelle. You can set up an ACH to come from another account or something like that. Or if you do have, if the person, wants to actually use that bank, they can have their merchant processor send the payments directly in there too. If they want to use it, and that'll just help out as well. Other than that, as far as debits, you want to use debit card swipes and also ACH transactions. And when it comes to that, it can be different types of transactions, but you want to make sure that those types of transactions look like they could be business related. So if you buy something from Amazon, it can be something from the business, and that should be easy for you to find something. Office Depot, if you have a cell phone bill for your business, if you have a virtual address that you pay for your business, anything that you have for your business that you do pay a software subscription, have that to come out of that account automatically. Those are just some easy things you can do. Do the dollar amounts matter? They don't. So it can be something that's $10, something that's $100. It just needs to look like transactions that you're actually making, for the business purposes. If you have, some trips to McDonald's on there, or just some other random places that just don't look like you doing it, you using this account for business purposes, it can cause an issue later on down the line and not look like you're actually using this for the right purposes, and that can cause issues and approvals. So you want to make sure you do that the right way. All right, so that consistent activity is what's going to be important with that whole strategy right there. Now, out of all of these things that we talked about, client accountability is going to be like the most important one because it affects the funding timeline. The faster you get a client funded, the more happy they'll be. And of course you'll be if you're getting paid a percentage of what you get them. So the faster you can get them to funding, the better. But clients can drag their feet. So it's going to be important that you are staying on top of them, right? So when it comes to credit reporting, new cards, lower utilization can take up to 30 days to reflect on the credit report, sometimes 45 days, depending on, what it is and when the action was taken. So because it can take that long, you want to make sure that that's, you're on top of that, or making sure the client is on top of doing whatever it is you need them to do. When it comes to business updates, filing for a new business, filing for changes to the business, making amendments to the name, adding people onto the business, that stuff usually can take about 2 weeks or a little bit longer, depending on your state. So you definitely want to make sure, they're taking action on that stuff, because once they do it, at that point, you're just waiting. So you don't want to add that wait time on top of waiting for them to get it done on top of the time it takes to get this stuff completed. All right. So time frames are external to our process and require the client's prompt action. That's why these next things are going to be very important. So you avoid unnecessary setbacks, right? So you want to make everything urgent to the client. Make sure that they feel and understand the urgency in what it is that needs to get done. So tell them, to provide whatever documents they need to provide to the state, or pay down what they need to pay down, and everything they need to do, let them know ahead of time, and let them know that it's all urgent to getting them the money that they need. You want to make sure that you're setting deadlines so that they know, hey, we need to get this done by this date. That adds extra pressure to them because they know that it needs to get done by that date, and then they're more prone to get it done. Of course, sometimes we might still have people to drag their feet, but they're going to be more prone to get it done. And the other thing that you do is daily follow-up, right? So make sure, unless it's something that's, they've already done it and it's going to take some time and you're following up about it, you want to make regular check-ins with them to make sure that they are on track and on task with getting whatever it is that needs to get done, so that they don't slow down the process. Because at the end of the day, even if it's them that have slowed down the process, they're still more than likely going to tell you it's taking too long as soon as they feel the pressure. I've had a person before who they wanted to go on a vacation before they started the funding, 30 days. After the 30 days came back, they felt the pressure of, oh, I still need to get this money for the business. And then they started putting pressure on me to try to help speed things along when it was already 30 days behind because they took a vacation. But at the end of the day, some of them might not care about that. They're still going to be looking at you, and they're going to, put it on you to try to get them the money quickly because they need it. So if you're staying on top of them as much as possible, you prevent that from being an issue that falls back on you as to why they did not get the money in a timely fashion. All right, so now we're gonna just recap what we talked about. First off, we talked about optimizing the personal credit. And if you guys have questions, now would be the time to start thinking about what they are. Optimize the personal credit, strengthen the foundation, aim for 5 to 10 accounts, secure high limit cards of 10K plus at least. from 1 to 2 tier banks. Keep that utilization under 10%, and ideally no lower than 3. Manage those inquiries strategically while you're doing that optimization stuff, trying to get the utilization down and adding cards and stuff like that. You want to make sure that you establish the business profile well across all platforms: Yelp Business, Google Business, Dun & Bradstreet. Make sure you have a good NAICS code that you're using, that's low risk. All of the things that's going to be important, especially the address things when it comes to Wells Fargo and US Bank. When it comes to banking strategically, you want to make sure that you're putting in the highest, have your clients put in as much money that they can into those business accounts, but also, at least doing the minimum that they would need. Make sure that they're putting activity into those accounts. Make sure they're putting the right NAICS code on the account when they're opening it. And just making sure that you are showing strong financial health in the account and showing that you're trying to build a relationship with that bank. And make sure that your clients are accountable and proactive in getting things done with all this optimization, because a lot of this is going to be in their hands after you tell them what to do. So you just need to make sure they're getting it done so that they can get their funding and you can get paid too. And that is it for optimization for today. What questions did you guys have? Will, I'm head of funding for Javi and Clarissa, and the company has basically helped over 400 credit and funding companies scale past the 7 figures. And the team wanted to do this boot camp to create a more visual representation for you guys and deliver so that you can be able to deliver on the services that we all offer. And today we go into execution. So everything that this day is going to be about is pretty much mastering putting in applications, data requirements, data points for those applications, and what to do after you put in the application with the different routes that things can go from there. So to make sure you guys are covered on all avenues. So the execution roadmap for today. As far as application methods, some of you guys may have seen some of this, but it's more expounded on. Well, there are more areas that we're going to cover today, but we're going to talk about those application methods like delivering the game plan, Zoom takeover, team viewer. We're going to talk about BRM strategies as well. We're going to talk about bank requirements, which is going to be the data points at those major banks that that most people can go to, and response protocols, as mentioned, that they'll be pending status, declined, and if they're approved, it may be approved for a lower limit. So we're going to talk about all those things, and then we're going to have your blueprint for what to do going forward. All right, so game plan delivery with Loom specifically. The way that this works is you create a detailed spreadsheet with lender info and requirements. That would be the game plan that we talked about on day 2. So that would be the game plan we already talked about. You would create that spreadsheet. Then you would record a Loom video walking through each area and each step. Doing that lets the client know how everything works, where they can find each piece of information that's important to the process, because it's all going to be in that document. So that's what you're doing when you're recording the Loom video, making sure that they know where everything is and knowing what everything means so that they can navigate through it with ease later on, and they have that video to go back to. And that means they don't have to keep asking you, what was this? What did you say about this? They have the recording and they can go back to it. All right. Now with this, the client would submit applications independently from their location, or, maybe if they want to go in a branch, but they can ideally do it at home. And, you would follow up with them via email or messaging to see how things went, to answer any questions that they may have. So that's pretty much how that works when you send them the game plan and send them a Loom video. And this is best for, if you have a tech savvy client, that prefers just doing things on their own, they maybe want to kind of learn things. High volume operations that need scalability, because with this, you can just do something as quick as doing a Loom video and get that delivered to your clients. And this is something that you can delegate to your team members as well, because they're just recording video explaining what the plan is. So not much involved there. Now, as far as the pros and cons, really, as far as time efficiency, it can be efficient. The only thing that can kind of slow it down time-wise is really that you have to make an individual one for each client, so it might be different for each client, so that can affect scalability with that. As far as actual scalability, it is highly scalable because it is just doing the Loom video, other than the customization part of that kind of being the part that slows it down. As far as client value, like half and half on how the client might perceive that, because some clients might want more, some clients might be cool with it, but it's not a higher end level of service. But it's zero cost, so that's an advantage of it. Easy to delegate to team members, as I mentioned before, and the client's IP address gets used. That's what is the key thing with all of these methods that we're going to talk about, the IP address, because if you send an application from your IP address, If your client is in Milwaukee, and you're in Georgia somewhere, and you put in the application, that's gonna trigger a red flag because the application IP address is far different from the client's actual address and everything related to the client. So you don't want to have those red flags, and that's why these methods are so important. Now, with this, it does require client cooperation and follow through. So you have to know that the client is actually going to put the things that you told them to put on the application, that they're going to do it in a timely manner, and that they're not going to get, kind of lost in the sauce on the application and need a lot of help. So that's some of the challenges that can arise from this. And, that leads to the risk of incomplete or incorrect submissions, which can cause, pending, denied, and it's less premium positioning because the client is doing the work. And again, it depends on the client's comfort with doing things like applications. If you have a older person, it might be a little more challenging for them, depending on how old they might be or how tech savvy they are. Now, we already looked at the game plan and what it entails. So I just wanted to, make sure that you have this visual here of, you want to make sure that this is what you're getting to the clients. And this is the updated version of the game plan. So, make sure that you are getting these things filled out, organized properly, and sent to the clients so that they can know all of the details of all of the steps and how to do it in order to prevent them from constantly having to ask you questions about, what they need to do next or what's being worked on. Now, you want to always deliver the game plan regardless of whatever methods you choose to actually get the applications in for the client. We're going to talk about the other methods in a second, but just wanted to make sure that you do that because that is going to ensure that no matter how the applications get put in, the client is still aware of anything that's required as far as information wise, timelines, next steps, what the lenders are looking for, what they need to do to look better to the lenders, and just so that they know what to expect during the process. Also, if they see that you have a plan versus, you're just kind of going to randomly be going through things, it also does make it look like you know more of what you're doing because you actually have a documented, organized plan that you can present to them. So it also makes you look better than the person that has absolutely nothing to give their clients. So just know that a lot of times that can impress the client too and make them feel like they didn't, waste their money when they paid to sign up with you because you actually have a put together plan. All right, now Zoom takeover. This is method number 2. Now with this, you schedule a Zoom call with the client. When you, get on a Zoom call, you're going to request remote control of their screen. Now, after doing that, you can submit multiple applications in real time while you're there on the line with the client. The client can watch the process and they can ask you questions. If there's anything, that maybe you that you forgot to get from the client, a piece of information, address, updated address, anything like that, you can get that immediate feedback from the client and get collaboration because you're right there on the call together. So it's really helpful in those ways. And also, they can enjoy just being able to see the process and how it works, and they get to learn this themselves. A major thing that we already talked about, the IP address, is actually when you're doing a Zoom call, even though you both are on the call, when you take over their screen, everything that is happening is being submitted from their IP address. So that, again, avoids the red flags so that you don't have to deal with those slowing up the applications or causing unnecessary denials. And it's, interactive. So, you can handle questions instantly versus a lot of times when you have a client to do it on their own, they're probably going to be messaging you, asking you, hey, what should I put for this? Even if you sometimes already sent them the information, they might still ask you that. Or if there's, maybe a change to the application, because sometimes that does happen too, then you can, be able to answer that question more quickly because you can see that there's new things on there, or it might be something new you need to ask the client. And applications don't change often, but, if it does happen, then you can get that information. As far as the pros and cons of this, when it comes to time efficiency, this is about 60%. So it's okay with time consistency only because, you have to basically do a lot of coordination with the client. As far as scalability, it's not as scalable because this takes a lot more time to send in a Loom video. And, the person that you have doing it, they have to know what they're doing as well. More than likely, you could get locked into doing this. Even if you don't have any employees. So, it can take up a lot of person's time and you don't want it to take up your time. And as far as client value, they see it as more valuable because you're doing it for them and they're actually getting to see it happen. So of course, that's going to make it a little bit more white glove service level. So they're going to appreciate that. Advantages, of course, it's low cost, builds a stronger relationship with you and the client because you're doing this together, reduces the application errors by a lot. It's like I said, almost white glove service level, but there's a higher level to it. It avoids fraud detection and red flags. Great for done with you to educate the clients. And some of the challenges are being time intensive, scheduling, coordination can be hard sometimes with some clients. Delegating it can be hard. And once you get to about 10 to 15 clients per week, that's when this can really start to take up a lot or maybe too much of your time doing this. And of course, that client has to be available and engaged too. So the other method is going to be the team viewer method. And this is remote submission. And there are two ways that you can actually use this. And TeamViewer is the software. You can go to teamviewer.com and get that software downloaded to be able to do this. It's basically a software that was created so that a person could assist another person remotely with like IT issues on their computer, or maybe something that they need to do on a computer if they aren't going to be able to actually execute on those actions or know what they're doing. So the client installs TeamViewer on their computer. They can grant you unattended access to their computer with what was downloaded, and you would of course be sending them a link, and they would download it on their computer. All right, you can submit applications remotely without a live call. So whenever you're ready, whenever you have time, that's when you can submit the applications, and you can work on your schedule. So you can also batch these applications, so you can do a bunch of them at one time, and the client can observe you passively or leave the computer on for you. When they're watching, when you do it the passive way, where they don't give you full access, they basically, somewhat like the Zoom call, they just leave their computer open, but they don't have to be like right there with you. They can leave the computer open. You just tell them at this time you're going to do it, and then you'll get access to the computer. You can do what you need to do without talking to the client, and then they'll see it. If they want to look at it, they can walk away and do something else. But the application gets submitted. It is being submitted from their IP address, so it alleviates most of the conflicts that you would see outside of that, and it allows you to be more flexible. You can work whenever you want to work and get this done. And you can do batch processing as well, as I mentioned. So 5 to 10 apps per client in one session is a realistic thing to do, because applications really mostly take about 5 minutes to do, 5 to 8 minutes to do for most of the banks. So it's not really time. It doesn't take a lot of your time at all. Now, as far as pros and cons of this, as far as efficiency, it's way up there, because you can do this kind of when you want to do it, whether they give you remote access or even if they want to have it where they have to open up the computer for you to see it. As far as scalability, it's at the max, because basically you can have anybody to do this. They don't have to talk to the client, and you can do it whenever it need be and do it quickly without any questions or anything like that from the client. As far as client value, that's like top tier premium, because more than likely they're going to expect that they're going to have to do it, or they would expect that you might have to talk to somebody to do it. But you just handling it remotely like that is really impressive and really high level, and that's really white glove service. Basically, you get the best time efficiency with this. You don't have scheduling conflicts. Easier to train and delegate a team to be able to do something like this. It's professional, premium positioning, guaranteed IP address compliance. You can do the work in batches. Great for gatekeeping data points as well, if you don't want your clients to know what the data points are that you're using on the applications. So they won't even have to see that. As far as the cost of this, there's a $0 cost of it. You can just use it. There's just limits on, like, you can use it as much as you want to, but if you need to have connections to multiple computers at once, then you start getting into like actually needing to pay for the upgraded versions of it. It does require client trust for them to give you that unattended access where they don't have to open up the computer and you can just go in and do what you need to do. So you have to make sure you have that trust with them, but of course give them the option on which one they prefer. The initial setup and client onboarding is needed for this, because you have to download it yourself. You have to send them a link and make sure that they have done what they need to do as far as installing it on their computer. And it's less interactive than the live Zoom sessions. So, you don't get to ask questions if you need to. They can't ask questions. They don't really know what's going on. So it's just less interactive, less time built with you, rapport built there with you and the client. And again, just to kind of compare these options, time per client, it could be about 30 minutes or so with the game plan and sending the Loom. It could be about 1 to 2 hours doing the Zoom. As far as TeamViewer, doing multiple applications, it can be like 1 to 1.5 hours. The highest scalability is really going to be with TeamViewer, but game plan is the second, and then Zoom Takeover is the lowest. As far as monthly cost, of course, Loom is free, game plans are free. Zoom Takeover, that's about $15 for what you would pay for Zoom, and TeamViewer can be $0 to $50. As far as delegation, it's easy to delegate the game plan. I have mine right here, but it's easy to delegate the team viewer, and it's more difficult for the Zoom. As far as the client value perception, it's going to be extremely high with the team viewer, and it goes down from there. IP address is good on all of these, and as far as error risk is higher with the game plan and letting the client do it, and it's going to be actually the lowest with team viewer and with Zoom Takeover as well. Actually, I'm sorry, it's lowest with Zoom Takeover because you have the client there just in case you need to ask them questions. Now, when it comes to this, you just kind of decide on which one you feel is the best for you at the point that you're at in your business. You can really do any of these at any point in time within your business. But if you want to kind of get used to how everything goes in a business first, you can start off with just doing a regular game plan, not to be too fancy. Just do the Loom videos and just get a feel for things until you build up, with your first 3 to 5 clients. Then once you feel more comfortable, you can upgrade to the Zoom and start doing those. And of course, you get extra feedback from clients. You learn a lot more while you're doing those applications with them, and giving them more white glove level service. And you can also charge more because you are doing the applications for the client, so you can charge more for that. And then you can scale up to TeamViewer once you get comfortable at that level. You can charge more, and you can handle more clients. You can do this when you're handling more clients monthly, like 10 plus clients a month, just to make sure things are really easy to scale and move up from there. And of course, you can mix and match some of these, having different levels for whatever the client wants to pay, and just mix and matching how you use this for the particular client that you're dealing with. And if you want to know how to exactly implement these things, like how to go in and make the settings right in your Zoom, and how to actually activate this while you're live on the Zoom, or get a visual of how you actually use the team viewer, there is a video inside of school in the curriculum. It's going to be right here under funding applications, doing online apps for clients without red flags. So you can find that in the school curriculum right there. And it is also in Circle for my Inner Circle members. I didn't have a screenshot here for you guys, but I'll put a direct link to it under this video so you can get directly to it if you want that information after I post the replay of this. So now let's talk about leveraging business relationship managers. All right. So if you don't know what a BRM is, because you're newer, they are a business relationship manager. They're specialized banking professionals who can significantly improve application outcomes and client experience. So this is something that you probably hear a lot of people talk about. And just wondering, does anybody that's in here now, does anybody work with any BRMs right now or has worked with a BRM? If you have, put a 1 in the chat. If you have not, put a 2 in the chat. I'm just wondering how many people have actually worked with one. Okay, I got 1, 2, another 2, 1. Okay, 1. Okay, about half and half. Okay, so some of you guys have, some of you guys have not. It looks like more of you guys have not actually worked with a BRM before. So some of this should be very helpful to you. So why use a business relationship manager? 1, higher credit limits. This is more so specifically, this is more so beneficial at Chase than at other banks I've seen when it comes to the higher limits. And that's not to say that you can't see a benefit in a limit because of outside of Chase, but this is where I've seen the most significant increase in the credit limit at Chase. Any of you guys that have been in funding for a while, you kind of know what happened. The Chase people used to be able to get 75, 50K from sending people to Chase and do a Chase BRM. So at that time, after sometime last year, I believe it was, they started to make changes and they started to geo-lock the BRMs at Chase to the point where they can only work with people. It's different for each kind of branch or area. Some can only work with people that can actually walk in, that they can see. Some can only work with people in their city. Some can only work with people in their state. And some just are not allowed to receive referrals at all. And it's just because of how crazy things got with people sending people to the BRMs. But because even though they had those changes, you can still, get decent amounts from Chase, but it's just not at the same level that we used to be able to see. Like I said, 50, 75 on one card. That's, that's really, really good. And a lot of customers did get spoiled with that in those times. Now, the other part of that is going to be, and let me mention this too. So in a situation where a BRM is still able to kind of help you as far as, even if they're not able to get you those high limits like we saw at Chase. Like I had an instance with one BRM, even though they weren't like really able to get a higher limit for the client got a limit that they didn't like. And it wasn't a low limit, but it was like 10K, but the client wanted more. The BRM was able to give me information to say, well, hey, what I've seen happen is if you submit an appeal to the credit limit application, then I've seen a client do this, put this on the appeal, and they got a big increase in what they got on the limit. So with that, even though them submitting the application through the BRM didn't get them a necessarily higher limit just from using them, the BRMs might have information that can help you in regards to what you can do in certain situations or what you can do to help get a person a higher limit. So that is one of the other benefits, even if it doesn't directly just from putting in the application get them a higher limit. Now, direct application links is going to be like one of the second biggest benefits that you get from them. At certain banks like US Bank, which you guys might know, isn't like located everywhere. Even though they're a national bank, they don't have a branch everywhere. So a client might have to drive a distance to go and try to get in there or try to do an application. Well, the BRM can send a link to a client to have them apply. Now that just provides extra convenience to your clients, and that is US Bank and Citizens, where I see them do that. So that is in Citizens Bank, isn't everywhere either. So that can kind of make it more convenient for the clients, and especially so with Citizens, because not only is Citizens not everywhere, they are regional, so they do have to be in the state of your client, but also you can apply for any of the cards online at Citizens. You have to go into a branch. So if there isn't a branch near them being able to get that application link is going to be far more convenient for the client than doing anything else. So that is one way that they provide some extra convenience there. Now, the status that it kind of gives you is one other reason to work with BRM. So having a BRM connection elevates your funding business's perceived credibility and professionalism, because when a client sees, a lot of clients, well, not a lot of clients, but some clients might ask you, hey, do you have connections at the bank? Because they hear about these things about people having connections at the bank. So if you can say, yes, I do have those connections, they're going to automatically think, oh, you have a leg up over the next funder or something like that. Even though they may not get a higher limit because of it, they don't really know all of that part. They're gonna assume it possibly, but it just makes you look better, gives you more credibility, and it looks like you have actual real connections at the bank. So it just makes it elevates the value of your service. With that, and as I mentioned earlier, they can provide insider insights that you may not have already known to do with the application or after the application. So that's the ways that the BRM can actually benefit you. All right, so how to obtain business relationship managers. This is going to be important to, and I'm going to give you more than one way, but this is the go-to way, right? So this one right here is basically going to LinkedIn. Pretty much everybody should have a LinkedIn, so everybody should have access to this. So BRMs can be difficult to access in local branches because most of the time they're not in a local branch. I know when I worked at Wells Fargo as a business banker, they had bankers in a branch, and then they had a whole separate office that was in a corporate building that was just for the higher level business account managers and stuff like that. So they put them strategically in a different place a lot of times so that they aren't dealing with that walk-in traffic and they can deal with the higher end things. So, and also a lot of times they'll put revenue limitations on them where somebody has to be making $1 million in revenue. They have to have X amount of money in their bank account just for a person to be able to talk to them. So because of that, you don't really have access to walk in locally to some of these branches, some of these banks, and go ahead and talk to them. So LinkedIn provides a way for you to find them, rather easily. So all you have to do is go to the search in LinkedIn, and they do limit your searches. You can, pay for the upgraded version, and you can get more searches in a month. But you can really get a decent amount of searches in just by doing this right here. Go to the keywords. I'm sorry, in the keywords, you want to put business relationship manager. You want to put the name of the bank, and you don't have to put the client's location because unless you want somebody in a specific location, you can just put the bank name and the relationship manager thing. See who pops up and reach out to as many people as you can. I would say, you want to probably reach out to maybe 8 people, 10 people, because everybody isn't going to respond. So you're going to have to reach out to multiple people at one bank just to try to make sure that you get what you're looking for. Also pay attention to, even when you do this search, you might also see relationship manager pop up, and you might not think it's different, but make sure that you're paying attention because a relationship manager is different from a business relationship manager. So just make sure you're paying attention to that when you see the results pop up and you look at people's actual titles and positions. Now, if you are looking for somebody that's at Chase in your area or in a specific area for a specific client, then you might want to actually, put in the geographic location so that you can find a Chase RM that might be able to work with that specific person, or if you do business locally a lot, maybe it makes sense to have a Chase RM in your city, because then you can have somebody to actually send somebody to when you deal with people locally, and that can be a benefit to you and your business. All right. One thing you want to do is send a connection request, because sometimes it won't let you send a message to somebody. So if you send a connection request to that person, and as soon as they accept it, you can send a message. And I wouldn't send it immediately, because you know how they have those people that can be spammy on LinkedIn and just be always sending you messages and stuff like that. So I would wait, maybe an hour or so after the connection request, and then maybe send something, so just don't rush in there as soon as they accept it. But basically, you want to send a message once you do get connected, and you want to, be as clear as possible in what you're trying to do. There are two ways you can go about it. You can straight up tell them, hey, I'm a funding company. I help people get funding, and I want to have somebody to send my clients to. And tell them these clients all have 700 scores, clean reports, so that they know that you're not just going to be sending them a bunch of, people that can't get approved for anything. You got to think about it from the standpoint of, when they look at this, they need to know, how are they going to benefit from what you are planning on doing? So letting them know that they have clean reports and they're ready to go for business funding and business credit cards specifically, then that's how you want to send a message, and that's one way. The other way is not mentioning that you're a funding company. The only reason why you might want to do that is because some business relationship managers have been reached out to by a lot of funding companies. So they might be kind of turned off from working with funding companies because of maybe having a bad experience in the past. So if you just mentioned that, you help business owners with their business credit, and you have some people, that wanted to get a business credit card, also saying that they have 700 scores and clean credit, and, you just want to have somebody to refer them to. Same thing, but you eliminate the possibility that they might not want to work with you just because you say funding company. So those are two different ways you can go about it. Just pick one, but make sure that you let them see the benefit and how it's going to work, how it's going to help them to work with you. And also, get their phone number if they say they're cool with it, and have a conversation with them, connect with them, and kind of get the details on how they want you to send people to them. Some might say, give me a call. Some might say, send me a text message. Some might say, send me an email with these specific pieces of information. So you just want to get that information. But the call is really to connect with them, so that they see you're a real person versus somebody just in their inbox, and also figuring out how to send a referral. But you just want to make sure you cover all those bases by the time you do actually connect with them. And it can pay to have more than one, because like I said, sometimes the BRMs, they might switch to a different bank. That can happen, infrequently, but it can happen randomly. And sometimes there might be a change where it might be a change where basically they aren't allowed to take clients unless they're in their area, just like they did at Chase. That's a possibility that could happen at other banks. So having more than one BRM at a specific bank, maybe in a different, city, a different state, or asking them if they have other friends that are BRMs that you can, talk to, that might be a way that you can get more than one, just in case something changes with the one that you have. Now, LinkedIn, like I said, that's one way, that's the go-to way, that's the old faithful to try to reach out to them. But there are other tools that are out there that you can actually use. Now, this tool is called ListKit. It's listkit.io. That's how you would, get to it on the website. And with this, it's a little bit different. So with this, you can get the contact details for the business relationship manager. Now, all you have to do is do a search, right? So you would go in there, you would search, you would filter by business relationship manager, by bank, you can put by location, and it'll give you a list of different banks. You'll be able to see what bank they work for and their job title, again, to verify that they are a business relationship manager and they are at the right bank. Because like for Citizens, there's more than one bank named Citizens, so you definitely want to make, when you are doing this, you want to make sure that it's the right Citizens that pops up there, so that you're getting a person that is at the right bank. Now when you do this, you can get emails and you can get phone numbers. So instead of relying on, just being able to, if they go on LinkedIn enough to check their messages, or if they're going to get back to you in the messages, you can just call them directly or email them directly. And with this, I would, probably call them and then send them an email after that, just to make sure that if you don't get to them, that they at least got an email from you, and then, probably call again. So you want to try to do this to make sure that you can get directly to them. avoid the inbox, clutter that can happen and you getting overlooked, and you can try more directly to get to them, and you would have the same explanation I told you to put in the messages. You would say the same thing on the phone, making sure that you're leading with, hey, I help these business owners. They have good scores. They're ready to go. I just need somebody to send them to. So they immediately know how they're about to benefit. Lead with that. And then, you can do everything else after that, build rapport with them after that, but let them know why they need to continue talking to you, and see if they're willing to, work with you. Now, with this particular software, you can do it for free. The next tier up is almost $100. But if you do 16 searches or less a month, then it's free. So thought it would be helpful to know that. You should be able to find a decent number of people within 16 in a month, for free. So if you really need to ramp it up and get a lot of people, if you want to get all the Chase RMs in your state, have at it. It'll just be like $97 a month to go and do the extra searches, but you have this tool there to help you get that contact information. All right. Now we're gonna go with bank specific data points. And just so I know, you guys, how many of you guys have heard of that service before, the list kit? If you've heard of it before, put a 1 in the chat. If you haven't heard of that, put a 2 in the chat. Just wondering if you guys have heard of that. Okay. Okay, about half and half, half and half. All right. All right, I see the real sauce. Yeah. Appreciate that. Okay, now let's go and talk about these bank specific data points. All right, so this is the next important thing. You select how you're going to do the applications. Would it be, the client doing it, you doing it through the various remote ways, going through the BRM to put in the application, or however it's going to be. You need these data points in order to make sure that you see success. So I'm gonna, kind of run through these because it's really just data points, and also you will have access to this information as well. It's already in the curriculum, but I'm going to put access to the document that has all these data points specifically underneath the video of this recording when it is posted. So you'll have this information. But at Chase Bank, of course, we already know we want the people above 720 or above 700 before we start working with them. But the ideal place for them is about 720. At annual revenue, I put 500 to 750 here, right? So with these ranges, just so you know, with these ranges, you can put a number anywhere between these ranges. These ranges are designed basically for not going too low where you're going to get a low limit, and not going too high to where they might request documents. Because if you put too high, some banks, they can't request documents. With Chase Bank, it used to be that you can put a lot higher, but online, it's a little bit more sensitive. So I wouldn't go too far past the 750 because I have seen some people get a request for docs. So that's why, online, a little more sensitive. So you probably want to be a little more, just want to stay within these ranges online with Chase. As far as annual income, what I've been starting to do is to have higher annual incomes to try to compensate for not going as high on the annual revenue, if that makes sense. When it comes to annual income, a person can put their household income. That's their income, their spouse's income, anybody in their house's income. They're allowed to do that for any credit card application. So that opens up the door for that amount to be a higher number. If you have two people with a 200, income, that's $400,000. So that is something that's possible. And even at these ranges, I have seen them not ask for proof of docs either. So just letting you know that the annual revenue, the annual income can in some cases also help the client out. As far as time in business, I put a year plus here. That's going to be the ideal situation for a person to get the best amounts from that bank if their business is a year older. Now, in some instances, you might have people that just started their business. One thing that you can do, sometimes a person, before they actually filed the paperwork, they were actually operating that business and making money as a sole proprietor before that. Because if they haven't filed the paperwork, they're basically a sole proprietor. So they might have more time in that actual business industry than what they actually have as far as the file document for the LLC. So you can use that accordingly in how you work with this number. Sometimes they ask you for the date, sometimes they ask you for the year, but you can work with that accordingly. Now, on the Chase application, you see estimated monthly spend. That is a number that tells the bank how much. It's not going to determine directly what they're going to get, but it determines how much they feel like they should be able to give you. Because if you say that you only make like $5,000, if you're only spending $5,000 to $10,000, they're not going to give you 30,000, 40, 50,000. So putting the higher number there is what's going to help the person get a higher limit because they're trying to see how much you're spending. And if you're spending that much, that means that they would need to give you a higher limit. And then, they kind of see the other metrics to see if how much they're going to give you within that higher limit that you are saying that you spend on a monthly basis. You have to also keep in mind that, you can't put that that they spend 50K a month and then their revenue is far less than 50K a month. So you have to keep that in mind when you're putting in these numbers as well, because you don't want to put something in there that doesn't make sense. That's because they're going to know it doesn't make sense. So make sure you're accounting for that when you're putting these things in. Again, most applications don't have monthly spend. So if you see estimated monthly spend, make sure that you are taking advantage of the fact that you have that on the application to put that in. So yeah, all of these things are what you want to keep in mind when you're going on the Chase application. Now, when it comes to American Express, and a question I've been asked before is like, why are the numbers different per bank? One of those reasons is because the most important reason is the banks have different sensitivity. So some of them are more lenient on the number that you put that they're comfortable with before they'll ask for docs. Others are real stringent on that. They really don't believe you beyond a certain number, so they want the proof. Amex is going to be one of those places. And with Amex, you can fall into the pit of death with them. Basically, if you put in a number on one application at any point where they ask you to connect your bank account, what I've noticed is, and I don't know if you guys have seen anything different, if the first time they ask you to connect your bank account to prove your revenue, which is how they do it, they're going to ask you that for every application after that. So you have to make sure you don't trigger that on the first application, because once you do, then it's kind of over. They're going to always ask every time. So make sure that you keep that into mind when you're dealing with Amex. But the best scenario with them, 325 to 350 is where you want to be with them. Again, much lower than like what we just saw at Chase, but this is what I've seen to be their threshold. That's the safe space. Personal income 115 to 125. Time in business 2 years plus is the best scenario. Estimated monthly spend 18 to 25K. And before you go to them, you want to make sure that the client has a personal credit card. If they don't have a personal credit card, then it is going to significantly decrease their chances of what they get. What I've seen, anybody that goes to get one of those business blue cards and they don't have any personal credit card or personal relationship with them, they usually end up getting $3,000 on those blue cards. So you definitely want to make sure that you are only sending them there if they have already had one, or I would say if they've had one for at least 2 to 3 months, then that would be like a safe space for actually knowing that you can send them in. If anything, send them in for the first blue card, see what they get. If they get 10K or better, proceed to the next card. If they don't get 10K or better, I would stop right there and let them build a relationship, and then go for the next blue card later, maybe whether it be 60 days or maybe 90 days later if they got a low limit on the first card. But you want to make sure that they're establishing their relationship. And you can go for both of those cards back to back in the same day, in case you were wondering that. So yeah, you don't have to wait. You can do them right back to back. And Bank of America. So Bank of America, the most important things with them are going to be annual revenue and personal income. There is not a bunch of other key things with them, and I'm only putting like the key things that you really need to know when you're doing the application. So with them, annual revenue 600 to 700, personal income 250, 325. I'm sorry. Truist Bank, and I'm gonna fly through the rest of these. Truist Bank, basically, you do want to have a higher score with them. I have seen that they have been a little bit tougher to deal with as of late, but basically you want to have about 500 to 650. Personal income 225 to 300. A year to 2 years in business is going to be ideal with them. Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo used to have it to where you had to wait 60 days to apply. They have taken that requirement off, so you can apply faster now, and that was to apply online. You got to have a business account for at least 2 months before applying. But now you can apply faster with clients as far as annual revenue. 225 to 365 is the safer range, but I have heard that you can go up to 800 now without them checking. So that is something that I have not updated on here, but I wanted to let y'all know that, so that is something that you can test out as well. But personal income 145 to 175. Wells Fargo was more sensitive, like Bank of America before. All right, now Elan Financial. This one is an interesting one. But Elan Financial, they are the underwriter for a bunch of different banks. If you have ever seen one of their applications, it looks the applications, the card names, the card benefits and rewards, they are all exactly the same at all these banks, and it's usually going to be like like I said, locally ran banks. It's a Renaissance bank. I can't think of a few other ones. It's just going to be very localized. So you just kind of have to look. Usually when you go to the credit card application, it's going to say at the bottom that it's underwritten by Elan Financial. And if you search Elan Financial, you can find some of the banks. But again, in the state by state document that I created for you guys, you can see what Elan banks are in each state. So you have a quick, easy access to those banks. With them, of course, 720 score. As far as annual revenue, 300 to 400, personal income, 150 to 225 a year in business. And with them, you don't have to have a bank account. You don't have to have anything like that. You can just go straight to online, do the application, and that's it. So it's really quick way to go get some funds for a client. U.S. Bank, they are very inquiry sensitive. So what you want to do, and they check TransUnion, you want to do with them, you want to make sure that you go to them first. Out of most of the banks, not a lot of banks check TransUnion. The biggest two that you're going to see is going to be Bank of America and U.S. Bank, other than Chase, because Chase is going to check Experian and TransUnion. I would go to U.S. Bank before going to Chase, because they are so inquiry sensitive, and sometimes they can be stingy about how much they give out outside of certain situations. But if you use these data points, you should be good. And I would like to say go to them before going to Chase, so that you can have them be the first inquiry, because Chase isn't going to care that much about one inquiry from them being there beforehand. All right, PNC, 680 plus, you can go to them. 520 to 700 as far as revenue, personal income 220 to 300, time in business is about a year. All right, Citizens Bank. Citizens Bank is just a tad bit different. They're going to ask you a question that some other banks, most of the other banks don't ask you. As far as annual revenue, 650 to 800. With them, you can get closer to $1 million as well. But as far as the extra question that they ask, as far as business profit, what you want to do is whatever number you pick, make sure that the business profit number that you put is 75% of whatever number you put. So that is a good rule of thumb for the net income question. And it's going to read like this specifically: net income, business profit, make it 75% of the revenue number. As far as annual personal income, anywhere from 180 to 200. As far as another question that they ask you, value of retirement, bank, and brokerage account. What I've seen is around the 220 range. That is what gets the best results with them. And time in business, at least a year or longer. Now, also, they do a soft pull on your credit. Amex does a soft pull on your credit too, if you already have an account with them or some relationship with them. But Citizens does a soft pull on Experian, and they do a hard pull on Experian Business. So they will actually check Experian Business. And I do advise that before you go to Citizens, you make sure that the client has their business address, phone number, and name registered on 411. Make sure that that information is consistent on Dun & Bradstreet as well, because they do a little bit more extra, looking into things as Citizens. So just making sure that their information is out there, available, and consistent in at least those places is going to be helpful. And of course, go to Citizens early on, because they do check the business Experian. So before you start racking up a lot of the inquiries at other places, you can go to Citizens early, because it's a soft pull on the personal as well. So keep that in mind with Citizens. All right, so now we're just going to go through what to do with protocols to have to follow after you get to those last steps after the application. So if the application is pending, very simple. You want to call the recon line, the reconsideration department, basically, and you're going to clarify some details. You're going to say, whatever happened is pending. More than likely, they're going to ask you to clarify some things. It could be that they just want to verify, your address. They want to verify, maybe your business name or something like that. Most times it's just they're trying to verify something. So you can just ask them what information they need you to clarify, if so, to get out of the pending status. Next thing, it could be that they want to verify that person's identity. So, you just got to follow the steps of submitting a driver's license, a passport, something like that. They'll usually ask for them. They just want to verify that this is the person that put in the application. So sometimes that can get them out of pending. Make sure that they submit whatever documents are, necessary. And more than likely, if everything has been done properly as far as the revenue an income that has been put in on the application. They shouldn't ask for, financial proof like bank statements or tax returns. But if they do ask that of the client, you have two different routes you can take. You can, one, you can leave the application there. Like if they don't have anything at all to prove the revenue, prove the income, then you can just leave the application on the table and just move on to the next place. The other things you can do is uh, have them submit what they do have. If they do have revenue that they can show, if they do have income that they can show, depending on what they ask for, have them submit that information. Now, it might be, very far from what was initially put on the application, but the only thing they would do from that point is either give them a lower limit, or they might just say no because the income is so different. So those are one of the two things that can happen, and those are the two routes that you can take in those scenarios. If they got denied, you want to, again, call the reconsideration line. And again, on that multi-state 0% card document, the reconsideration line for each bank is on there. So if you don't know where they are, it's on that document. If you have to, you can Google search it, but we have that information for you. All right. What you want to say is, or have the client say is, I recently applied for a credit card and received notification that I was denied. I don't know how this happened because I have a 750 plus credit score, whatever their score was. Have them say that, and if they open an account with a large deposit, like 2,000, 5,000, or however much they put in at the bank, you want to also have them to add, and I have X amount of dollars in my account. Can you look into this and reconsider this decision? There are a lot of times where the decision can get overturned because they looked at this. It might have been that the algorithm just automatically denied them for some, strange reason, and they go ahead and give them the approval. The Chase reconsideration line has usually been like the best, but it can work with the other reconsideration lines as well. It could also be that, there was one time I saw a person, they got denied because one of the credit limits on one of the utilizations on one of their cards was super high. They said the denial reason was high utilization. And looking at the credit report, it was actually a card that was already updated. But for some reason, it didn't show up that it was already paid down, but didn't show up as updated on the report. So they ended up going ahead and giving it the approval because they saw that it was actually paid down. So it can work just to call and see why they denied and provide some extra information. It could even be that they have a higher utilization, a card that seemed high on the credit report with that particular bank. Like if you have a personal card with that same bank and maybe you paid it down and it just wasn't on the credit report. Well, if they look at it with manual review and see that card was actually paid down, they might go ahead and give them the approval. So all of those things are reasons that they could reconsider that denial and still give that person the money that they're looking for. All right. If they got approved, but for a low limit, again, call the reconsideration line. This is what you want them to say. I recently applied for a credit card and received notification that I got denied here. I'm sorry. But again, you got approved for a low limit. I don't know how this happened because I have a 750 credit score and I have X amount of dollars in my bank account. And I planned on doing more business with your bank. And I plan on spending X amount monthly. Again, some of those applications, they don't have monthly spend on it. So telling them how much you planned on spending monthly, and the limit you gave won't let me do that. Can you look into this and reconsider the decision? Now, this lets them know that you plan on spending a lot more money, which is what they want, because eventually they're going to be making money from fees and interest on the card. So if you're going to be spending the card, using the card, that's exactly what they want. And that's why you're telling them what they want to hear to try to get them to increase the line. And this can lead to an increase of an extra 5K, even 10K in some scenarios. So you might not get exactly the number that you want, but you can still get an increase, which more than likely an extra 5 to 10K will make a big difference for the client, depending on what that initial limit was. So all of this is going to be worth it. All right. So basically, from everything that we went over today, you have a blueprint for success when you are doing your applications, when you're getting to the funding stage in the applications with your clients. So you now know how to master various approaches to the applications to make sure that you have less resistance when coming to the approvals, like the IP addresses, issues with scheduling with the clients. You have methods you can have white glove level service to work with your clients and submit applications. You know how to get BRMs from different methods and how to connect with them so that you can have that extra level of service and that extra credibility from having those relationships. The bank specific data points to use and why those kind of exist and are the way that they are, so that you can use those when you actually get to the applications, and how to navigate through whatever outcomes might happen, whether it be a pending application, a denied application, or a low amount for an approval. Um, and I'll add this too. At some of the banks, you can also combine credit limits on a card. So if you have a card with if you can get multiple cards from a bank and they all have like decent limits or lower limits, at some banks you can combine those limits so that a person can, even if they look like they got a bunch of low limit cards, they can turn them into one high limit card so they can still see the ultimate benefit in the service when they get that high limit card, that they can swipe that one card for everything. And at Amex, they actually allow you to move your personal limits over to your business card limits. So if a person already had limits on the personal side with Amex, and let's say you had to get some increases to get higher limits on the Amex cards, well, you can have them to move some of that extra money from the personal side to the business side to kind of help boost up what they got on the business side. So those are just some things you can do to also help with what they get or their perceived value of what they got with their funding by the time you have gotten them the money that they're looking for. All right, now that's the end of the presentation for today.
Perfect. All right, so today starts with the day 5 of the funding bootcamp, which is all about client management. So what I want to cover on right now, why is it not working? Okay, perfect. So far, everything that we covered was during day 1, we understood how to onboard your clients. On day 2, how to review their credit and create a funding game plan for them. On day 3, what we covered was profile optimization. So both on the personal side and on the business side, so that we can have a client's profile perfect for maximum underwriter approvals. And day 4, we covered how to do the application process. So how you can submit these credit applications. Now, what I want to talk about today is going to be client management and offboarding. So we want to focus on how to manage your client, how to collect reviews, how to reintroduce referral programs, and how to offboard them and how to upsell them so that we can increase LTV per client. Now, I want to go ahead and talk again about the client's journey. So from offboarding to offboarding, and then later on, we're going to go into detail on each one of these steps. Now, there's 2 ways that we can do this, which we kind of talked about this already before, but we'll go over again. We can either do option A or option B. Basically, it's just an extra call difference. The time commitment for the client is kind of the same. So basically, what it would be is on option A, First, we create the game plan, right? So the client gets onboarded, they submit the form, we create their game plan. We review their credit profiles and we create the game plan. Then in option A, you can have an optional 15 minutes call for the onboarding call, which this one can be done off of even just a simple phone call. And then the real onboarding call would be the game plan delivery, which that one on average takes about 30 minutes, where we outline everything that we're going to be doing for the client as far as like the funding sequence. So if there's any optimization, what are the steps and which card we're going to be applying for. And then we're going to have another call with the client where we do the actual application, right? This one, of course, will depend. We may not have it if you're just giving them the game plan and they're doing it themselves. Or if you're doing it for them, like you're doing it with the team like we showed you yesterday, you're not doing it on a call, but you will still take this 1 to 2 hours to actually submit the application. So it's still time that you will be spending to fulfill on the clients. And then we will have the offboarding call. Option B, we're just basically doing the onboarding call and the game plan delivery together into one call only. Either option, the only way you will have extra calls besides this 4 to 3 calls with the client is going to be if they have any denials or applications pending or anything like that. You need to do extra calls with them. But on average, you will have like about 4 calls per client. So with this 4 to 5 calls per client, you will be spending around 5 hours per client in order to actually fulfill them. Does that make sense? So we are going to have like 1 hour to 2 hours to create the game plan, the game plan delivery, and the onboarding call on average 15 to 30 minutes, up to 45. For the applications, is going to be from 1 to 2 hours. And then for the offboarding call is going to be around 30 minutes. So that averages out to around 5 hours per client in order to fulfill them. And this number is going to be important in just a second, because the next thing that I want to talk about is the team. So what is the fulfillment capacity and hiring threshold? Now, I know that like majority of the people who have been attending the calls for this past couple of days, they were more of solo entrepreneurs. They didn't really have yet a whole team, but we do have some people who have already a full team. And so I wanted to talk about like what would be the fulfillment capacity and the hiring threshold. So when should you be hiring any additional client success manager, or if you're doing it all by yourself, when should you be hiring your first one? Okay, so let's talk about first the CSM time management. The CSM stands for Client Success Manager, which is going to be basically the person who does the fulfillment, right? So you're going to have like at least one client success manager, and their standard work week is going to be around roughly 40 hours a week, right? Now, if you want to do like obviously they're not going to be doing the 40 hours fully just on delivering on clients. They're going to have other tasks, right? So you may ask them to do research, to keep learning learning about funding. Meetings with you guys or any other tasks that you may give them. So they're not doing their full 40 hours just on fulfilling clients. So let's say that is about 70% is going to be fulfillment time. So that averages out to 20 hours a week for a CSM. Now, an average funding cycle for a client is roughly a month and a half. Some clients will be done in less time. Some clients will take a little longer. But what I've seen is that on average, it takes about 45 days for a client to get funded. So each client will take about 45 days, which is a month and a half, and about 5 hours of total actual work time per client, okay? Which these numbers are going to be important now because we're going to start doing some math on this, okay? So what is your maximum current client capacity, right, per CSM? So if your CSM has about 20 hours of usable hours per week, and 0.75 hours per client per week. Actually, I forgot to show you guys that math. Okay, no, okay, perfect. Okay, then it means that one person can actually work with 37 clients, okay? I'm sorry, Chantel, but there's no one in the waiting room right now. So I don't see Howard unless he's in the wrong link, but he's not here yet. So basically, this calculation show that approximately one CSM can handle about 37 clients, okay? Now, to ensure that there's service quality, we don't want to overwhelm our CSM, so we recommend an average of about 30 active clients. But now we have to take always something in consideration, that why is the actual monthly capacity, why does it actually matter? Because like we were talking about before, if we're enrolling 30 clients on a monthly basis, and that's like the threshold for one CSM to handle, you and each client stays for a month and a half, it means that on month 2, the CSM is going to have overlapped clients, right? So those 30 clients, they're not going to be resetting every single month. So it actually is less how many clients your CSM can handle. If you're closing 30 plus clients every single month, on month 3, your CSM is going to break and is going to need help, right? Because we always have to take in consideration that majority of clients will be staying in our pipeline for longer than a month. Okay, now I see Howard. Perfect. So what is the actual weekly workload per client? So we have a total of 5 hours per client divided by 6.5 weeks. So that means that we have a 0.75 hours per client on a weekly basis, okay? So how can we actually calculate how active clients are accumulating? So active clients equals monthly new clients times 1.5, which is the months that they normally stay on average, okay? So what does this mean? Is that what is our actual monthly closing capacity per one CSM? If we have 30 clients divided by 1.5 clients, like of length of staying, that means that our CSM can actually handle 20 new clients per month. I know that is a lot of like numbers, but does this make sense? Please drop a 1 in the chat if this makes sense. Awesome. Perfect. So to kind of recap what we were saying before, if we're just going based off of the weekly hours that, if we're going based off of the weekly hours that our CSMs has available and how long it actually takes to fulfill on a client, ideally a CSM can handle 30 new clients on a monthly basis. But because a client can stay for longer than a month, they can actually handle less. So they can actually handle about 20 new clients per month. Does that make sense? Is that better, Kashina? Is that more clear? Perfect. Awesome. So just to be safe and conservative, a CSM can normally handle between 15 to 20 new clients on a monthly basis. Okay. So when should you be hiring a second CSM? Whenever your monthly closure is consistently exceeding 20 clients on a monthly basis. So if for 2 months in a row you're closing more than 20 people, you should be looking into hiring an additional CSM. And then you also want to take in consideration if the clients are staying for longer than 30 days. Because if all of your clients are getting offboarded in within 30 days, then you can wait a little bit longer. And then you would want to check the response times and if there's any funding results slips. So if you notice that when you start closing 22 to 23 clients a month, then and your funding team is producing less results and your clients are waiting longer to get responses, then you might want to look into getting an additional person. And later on, we're going to talk about how to actually measure, control these metrics and how to stay on top of all of it all. Now, if you had 2 people, then that means that they can handle up to 60 active clients and 40 new clients on a monthly basis. Okay. Now, what if it's just you? When should you even hire your first CSM? So as a solopreneur, your focus is already distributing between the 3 departments of the business: marketing, sales, and fulfillment. So basically, if you're doing simple math, it means that you can handle a third of what a full-time CSM could, which means 10 clients a month. Okay. So when should you hire? So you should be hiring your first client success team only when you have 10 new clients per month for 3 consecutive months in a row. So what does that mean? If for 3 months on a row, you enroll 10 new clients each month, at that point, you should be considering on looking into hiring a new CSM. Okay. Now, if you're thinking already right now, or you'll be thinking about this whenever you do reach that point that, oh, I don't have enough time, I can't do it all, I should be delegating, respectfully, don't be a little bitch. You can do it and you should be doing it. And the reason why you should be doing it yourself is because number one, you want to learn the process yourself because you're not going to be able to manage and delegate something that you have never done yourself before. Second, and most important, is because you should be, unless you're rich already, unless you have money. That point number two will not matter if you already have a shit ton of money in your pockets. The reason number two is that you should be building a proper foundation so that you can maintain your team. The moment that you hire someone, it is your responsibility as a business owner to provide them work and to provide them of their pay. So if you don't already have a stable influx of clients and enough money already in the bank account in order to sustain their pay, even if you have a bad month, then you should have not been hiring in the first place. Does that make sense? Can we drop a 1 if we agree that we should be taking care of all of our clients, at least if we have less than 10 clients on a monthly basis? You guys have enough time in the day to be able to handle the marketing, the sales, and the fulfillment if you're under 10 clients on a monthly basis. There's no excuses. If not, you don't want the money bad enough. Guys, make sure to be muted, please. Now, managing clients. So actually, everything that I said so far, does that make sense? I know there was a lot of math. Are we all clear on it? Thumbs up. Are we all clear? Awesome. Perfect. So how can we actually stay organized with your success system? There's going to be 3 main things that I'm going to be covering today, which is going to be the pipeline, task and notes, and a custom dashboard that I have created for you guys. So let's talk about first the pipeline management. Let me actually, I did not open that page. Let me open up the page first. Okay. So we've been showing you this pipeline already for these past couple of days, but I want to go into a little more details on this pipeline. Is this too small or can you guys see it good? Should I zoom in? Okay. All right. So a pipeline in general, whether it's for sales or for the client, like for the client journey, the end goal of a pipeline is for a lead to go all the way to the end. Okay. So the main purpose of this pipeline is for the client to go through these all steps and getting to the end, which in our case is going to be graduated, right? Now, all of these ones are just dummy names that I put just to show you guys a little bit of how this works. But basically, we kind of talked about it already, but let's go through it real quick. The moment that we onboard a client, they will go here. They receive their welcome email. The moment that they submit their application, their onboarding form, they go here. The moment that they book their onboarding call, they will go here. Okay. Now, something that we haven't talked about that we added for you guys is when they are in the optimization process. So if you guys notice, I divided this just like the days of the funding bootcamp. Day one was onboarding, so it's all one. Day two, it was reviewing their credit and creating and delivering their plan. Day two. Day three was all about optimization. So all the optimization steps are here, right? And here, what we have implemented as well is that every time that you move a person and it goes into one of those optimization processes, it will add automatically a note to the client with the SOPs of what you're supposed to be doing in order to optimize and take him out of that stage. So let me show you, for example, the automations. As you can see right now it just added the automation. So here we added all the SOPs on how to fix the issue of the bucket of where the client was in, right? So here we have the utilization SOP. So if you are hiring someone in the future, you can what I meant is that you can either use this for yourself to train yourself and remind yourself of this, or to train your future CSM whenever you do have them. Now, again, the goal is to go all the way to the end, right? So here we have the optimization process. Here you would put them once is during the application process. If you have people who have gotten denied, they're pending, or they have low limits, you can categorize them in here. So this is just a tool to stay organized, okay? Once you have them funded, you will put them into funded. And once you complete your offboarding call, you will put them into graduated, okay? Now, remember, every time that you're moving these things, stuff is happening, right? So we have videos in the curriculum where we show you, I go in details into what each automation does and triggers from. I'm not gonna do it right now just because this presentation would be too long and I want to cover as much as possible. So basically, you as the manager should be reviewing this, and whoever is your CSM should be utilizing this as a tool, right? Because what you want to do is make sure that you are moving the clients throughout the pipeline. So if you see that there's someone that is like 3 or 4 days that is stuck on onboarding form submitted, it means that they never booked their onboarding call. So what do we want to do? Call, text, and reach out to the client. How can you do that? You would just click on their name right here. So let's say that this is a person. You can, if you have the E2P verification approved, you can click right here and you're automatically calling the lead. And you can make all phone calls through here, and they will be recorded into right here. So right here, a new bubble will show up with the call and the recording. So like that, you can either review yourself to learn, because at the end of the day, even client management is a little bit of sales, right? Or you can review your client success manager to make sure that they haven't said anything wrong, right? Now, you can call them, you can send them an email. So right here, you can send them a text message, or you can send them an email. For my people who also are targeting the Hispanic community, you guys can also attach WhatsApp. So you can send them messages directly to WhatsApp, since I know that for that demographic is more common to use WhatsApp instead of regular messages. So right here, this is how you can message and contact them. Now, something else that you should be doing is utilizing the tasks and the notes. So in here, obviously, we want to put all notes about the client. So anytime that you have conversation with them, or that you have done something for them, I would add a note here so that everything stays organized into one place only. Now, if you have something that you have to do for them, or that you have to remind them to do, I will utilize the tasks. So let's say that, for example, we asked the client to pay down credit card by, and then we put the date. Here we can put a description of the task, and then here we can set a reminder of the date and the time. So now we're going to receive a notification that, like, the date that is supposed to happen and at the time, and now I can be like, oh, let me go message my person. Let me now open the name of the person, message them, hey, just a quick reminder, you're supposed to be paying down your credit card, or whatever the task was. Okay, so this is a tool that you can use to stay organized and remember everything that you're supposed to be doing for the client, or to maintain them accountable on what they're supposed to be doing. The CRM is a separate thing from school. Is as well $97 a month, because it's two different services. And yes, the opportunity value is calculated based off of the funding that you give them, not the personal credit card limits. That's the funding that we're going to give them, and I will show you in a second why we put it there. So here, the opportunity value will stay at 0 until you have funded the client. So once you fund your client, in the opportunity value, you would put here the total funding amount. Okay. Then if you want in the notes, you can put like each approval like separately, or you can just use the game plan with the results tab. But here you would want to put the total funding amount. Okay. Now, let me make sure I'm covering everything. Okay, okay. So, uh, something that we haven't discussed yet during the previous presentation was how to charge a success fee. I know that a lot of people in the community either do a success fee or they charge upfront. If you were to be charging a success fee, then you need to make sure that you have these things in place in order to make sure that you're charging them right away and that you're collecting all of your payments. So number one thing that I would recommend doing, and we have a full SOP, I'm not gonna go through every like all the little things, but the number one thing that I would do is that you need to request them to have a credit card on file, preferably having an ACH form where you can withdraw money from their bank account if they decide not to pay you guys. So a lot of the times with the success fees, people could run off, with the approvals and not pay you guys. So one thing I would do is to always ask for either a credit card or an ACH form to have on file as backup if the client, decides not to pay. Second thing would be to have a success fee payment and collection authorization clause into your guys' agreement. In our template inside of the CRM and is also as well in the community, that clause is already added. So if you already have some agreements that you're using, you can just go ahead and over there and copy and paste it into yours and add it. And I would have both a checkbox and a initials so that the client is actually making sure that they're reading it. And if they didn't, at least they put their initials so you can keep them accountable to it. So basically what we want into this clause is basically to tell them that their success fees are due upon approvals. They have about 10 days in order to pay them. The reason of the 10 days is because they're gonna want to use the credit card to pay for it, obviously. So basically, you would want to allow them 10 days. 10 business days. So 5 to 10 days for them to receive the card, to activate it, and then to submit the payment. So maximum 10 days. And if they don't comply with that, you can also send them into collection if it has to escalate to that point. Normally, majority of the time, is more of a scaring tactic. I've never, like, for the little times that I've had to do a success fee, and I had some instances where clients weren't like they weren't paying fast enough, basically. It was more so of a scaring tactic. I've never sent anybody actually to collections, but it's something that you can tell them. They're here talking about their credit. They know that you know everything about their credit, so normally they take that pretty seriously. And then you'll want to implement a card arrival and activation follow-up sequence. So basically, the moment that a client gets approved, you want to make sure that you're adding yourself a task, just like I just showed you guys, reminding you that in about 7 days from that day, they're supposed to have received their card so that you can go ahead and message them again. Now we have a whole SOP here on how to collect the success fee. So you guys can review it in here. To kind of skim through it quickly. The first thing is that the success fees are collected upon approval, and we are only waiting if we have to wait for the credit card to be received and activated. But a lot of banks are offering having a digital cards. So banks like Amex, Bank of America, Chase, and Wells Fargo, you can actually collect the payment right there and there because they offer digital cards. But how can we actually know how much they got approved for? So it depends on the scenario on how you're submitting the application. So it goes back to what we were talking about before. Did you do Zoom applications live with them? Did you do TeamViewer where you're submitting the applications for them? Or are they doing it themselves alone? Because in the first two options where you're doing the live Zoom or the TeamViewer, you most likely know because you're there with them or you're doing it for them. So you can see the approval rate, right there and there. So you can just do your calculations right there of how much it's supposed to be. And if instead they're doing it themselves, or in the event that for the other first two options that I just mentioned, the client application is pending, so you don't know the funding total amount right there and there, then you would have to ask the client to send you proof. Something else that you guys can implement as well is that you can tell the client that until you see the proof of the previous approval, you will not be giving them the data points for the next one. So they're basically stuck in that process. And plus, if they don't tell you how much they got approved for, or if they got approved for, that means that they technically got denied. So they would technically go ahead and tell you and complain that they got denied. So unless you're hearing a complaint, it means that they got approved for something, right? And then in the bottom here, we have all the other, the full SOP on how to request a credit card on file and how to do the 5-day follow-up sequence as well, with templates of text messages and emails to send them. So that's how you can collect payments. Next, something else, another tool to stay organized on the go ahead level system is going to be utilizing your dashboard. So if you head over to dashboard, the first view is going to be about the sales pipelines. But if you click on the button right here, I have made you guys one that is for the funding clients. Now, there are certain features that I wish were better that don't depend on me, that depend on go ahead level. I'm submitting like every other day request on changing them. So hopefully they add them as well, because there are certain things that I wish that we could do that right now they don't support it. But to give you guys a quick overview of how this looks like and works, right here, at first we have the client management part. So here, we're going to be able to see a list of all the tasks that we put. So every time that you put a task on lead, right here, you're going to be able to see the tasks, right? Here you can put between pending, if they're completed, or all of them, and then you can put the date. So from ascending, descending, and so on and so forth. Now, the one feature that unfortunately I cannot do is that here you will see the task of everybody. So it will also include any tasks that you may put from the sales pipeline. It's not just the client's pipeline. That's one of the features that I'm asking them to add to be able to filter this task option. Right here, you will be able to see total clients that got onboarded, and right here to the top, you can change the time frames. So you can see, like year to date, last 30 days, a month from now, past 2 weeks, past 7 days, and so on and so forth. If you have any unread messages, right here, it will tell you if you have any unread messages. And this is the one little bubble that is going to help you to make sure that you're not losing any messages from your clients. And then right here, we have total amount of checking costs. That's just to track it. Right here, you have instructions on how to make this work, because unfortunately, since it's a snapshot, you will have to assign the person who is receiving these messages, and I can't do it for you guys because there's technically nobody added yet. So if you click right here, there's a video where it explains how to do it. In the bottom right here, you're going to be able to see the active client list. So here will tell you the active users that you have right now in your pipeline. So you can see all the names, you can see when it was created, their emails, phone numbers, and then I added the MyScoreIQ password and username and their legal business name so that you can see everything in right there clearly. And now it says MyScoreIQ, but if you guys are using Experian or any other, you can just change the name and you can put whatever you prefer there. Then we can look at the stage distribution. So we can see how many people are in each stage of the pipeline, right? And then in the bottom, we can see the funding results. This is looking a little funny because I'm zoomed in. So here we're looking at the total funding acquired this year, right? So that's why it's important to put the total funding amount on the opportunity value, because this is where these bubbles are getting their numbers from. Okay, so total funding amount acquired this year, and then in the bottom right here will tell you what the comparison based on the previous year. So as you start using this, like in your 2+ years using this, you're going to be able to see the trends based on your past years. Then we have the total funding acquired this month alone. Right now, this is dummy numbers, right? So that's why like they're the same amount right here. And then here it will give us an average of funding per client. And then it will tell us also how many clients we have lost, okay? Now, why is this important? This is important because you can open this up even during a sales call, and when somebody asks you, okay, but like, how do I know if you're actually gonna be able to fund me? You can tell them like, hey, look, in this year alone, I've already acquired $1.2 million of funding. This month alone, it was this much, and on average, between all my clients, they all get this amount. So, and you can show them that this is from your CRM, from your system, and is your real number. So this can also help you. Not only helps you track your funding results, but it can also help you on both your marketing and on your sales process, because now, if you have a dashboard like this and you're showing these numbers, you can easily do an ad where you're showing this, So just like sometimes people do the screenshot of like their Stripe dashboard that they made X amount of money, you can now show this instead. And obviously, you can also backtrack this. So if you have already, you maybe in a spreadsheet or anything like that, you can add all your past clients there so that you can start to automatically add it in this number so that you can populate this. So this is the dashboard that you can use to stay organized with your client. So to recap, how can we actually stay organized? you're going to check your funding dashboard on a daily basis, look for any unread messages, any tasks that need to be completed or that you have to remind to your clients to complete. Check your pipeline. The goal is that all leads reach the end. And then utilize your tasks and your notes so that you can keep yourself and your client accountable and organized. Okay. Now, how can we offboard a client? And you should be scheduling a call with your client, but you shouldn't be calling it like offboarding. Some titles that you can use is capital maximization session, capital optimization call, or my favorite, post approval strategy session. Okay, and the purpose of this call is to review this is what you can tell the client before booking it. Like, this call is to review the results we got you, show you how you can squeeze in even more value out of the cards that we got you, and then talk about what was the experience like, so that you can help us and contribute into us being able to improve our service. Okay. So that's the purpose of the call. But the real purpose of the call is to collect a review, introduce referral programs, and upsell your clients. Okay. Now, I created a whole offboarding funding client SOP. We're gonna go over really quick on them. And is this big enough? Is this good? Okay. So the purpose of this call is to review all the funding results and approvals, educate the client on how to maximize the rewards, points, and leverage them, reinforce the value that we just delivered, collect organic feedback and testimonials, reintroduce upsells, and then reintroduce also your referral program, which technically you should have already said in the onboarding call. So first off, for all of your client success manager or yourself, if you're doing these calls, you should be having a internal preparation. So before the call, you want to make sure that you have the funding game plan open, which means the template that we showed you guys right here. So their funding template, and then having the results page open for them. Okay. Now, you should be reviewing all the list of the approvals, be aware of all APR and promo terms, review the reward structures, key benefits, and then do smart usage recommendations per card. Okay. And then you would want to identify already one or two relevant upsells based off of, their business type, the offers that you guys already have in your arsenal, the revenue level, and their intent for the capital. Okay. Now, the call structure, this is how it should be. Step number one is going to be, obviously, like always, framing the call, right? So today's call is going to be reviewing everything that you were approved for, show you how you can use each card the smartest way possible so that you can maximize the points and benefits, and then talk about how this experience was so that we can help improving. At the end, we will also talk about the smartest next move for you, if there's any that you can do, okay? So first, what we're going to be doing is reviewing their funding results, okay? So basically, you wish screen share. You will go over the results list. So you would tell them, okay, this is all the cards. We got approved for all of this ones. Your total funding approval is all of this. Now, based off of the cards that you got them approved, you would want to kind of go back to this ones and utilize this page to talk to them about what are the benefits of each one of the cards. So let's remember, this one was a 0% for the next 12 months. You're going to be having 2x points on purchases up to blah, 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 and go over each one of the details of what should be using this card for. So you want to outline to them which card they should be using for what purchase, okay? So as we all know, like if we have a certain card, like basically we will tell them like card by card what this card is best for. So we will tell them this one is best to be used for ads, inventory, travel, software, so on and so forth. Talk to them about the reward structure. So if there's any threshold of amount of spend that they should be doing in the next X amount of months, you would want to explain to them, hey, in this card, make sure that you're spending X amount so that you can actually get those points, okay? So tell them how to strategically use this credit card. And then you can give them optimization tips. So, basically talk to them about this card, don't make right away a super huge transaction. Chase is a little bit picky if you make big transactions right away. So they may close your account or flag it. So make sure that you're not, making big purchases right away and so on and so forth. So basically just give them a little bit of guidance on how to properly use these cards. For each one of these steps, I push you guys like a template of like what you can tell them. Okay. So again, here's what I was just saying, educate them on the usage and the risk of each one of the cards. So step number 5 would be basically talking about their experience with your guys' program, which basically means a testimonial for you guys. So we're basically getting a testimonial without them feeling like we just booked the call just to ask them for a testimonial, okay? Because we all know sometimes it's hard to get testimonials. Like people don't really want to book a call, and mostly the funding clients, they just want to go on with their day. So if you're already booking a call with them and you're framing it as, I want to go over to about your results and how you can maximize the thing that you already got, they're not going to want to miss that call because they're going to feel like they missed on something that was part of the package that they paid for, right? So halfway through the call, that's where you would start asking them a couple of questions. So what stood out the most to you about this process? Was there anything that you got that you didn't expect or you didn't think you would have gotten? Ask a couple of questions, and this is the part that of the recording that you can clip and use as a testimonial. Remember, if you're using our template of agreements, in the agreement, we do say that every single call that we do is recorded and can be used for these purposes. So they have already given you, they already signed an agreement that says that we can do this. So we're not doing anything illegal or anything that they don't, they shouldn't be doing, that we shouldn't be doing. Okay. And then next, you would want to introduce the referral conversation. You want to do it casual. Thank you so much for sharing for that. That means a lot. Do you know anybody else who would be benefiting from this offer and it would be a no-brainer for them? They will tell you, okay, if you think of anybody else, please send them our way. We will give you an X amount of dollar amount bonus for the referral. So you're kind of like already telling them, but you're not being too pushy about it. Okay. And then next, you will want to introduce the upsells for your other programs. Now, this one, I put some examples, but obviously it depends on what you guys already have and if you're targeting any industry, any niche specific people, right? So what you could tell them is that based on what you shared and everything that we have worked on together for the past X amount of time, there's a couple of ways that we can help you grow even further. So let me walk you through what makes sense. Now, remember, we don't want to like slap them a whole list of like seven or eight upsell offers. We would want, like, you know your client already because you have worked with them, so you would want to pick only the ones that make sense, right? So some can be ongoing funding monitoring and then doing a second round for a discounted rate. So you would want to set up again a task into your CRM reminding you that in 6 or 12 months their 0% APR is about to expire. And I know this one is a long term, but it's a way for you to, like, we're opening a business to be here long term. So this is something that you should be doing in the first place. So you should be setting up a task that will remind you 8 months from now to follow up on that person and tell them like, hey, I know that your 0%, I hope you're doing good, blah, blah, blah. I know that your 0% term should be expiring soon. Do you still have balance on your credit cards? Can I help you getting approved for more 0% cards and doing any balance transfer? So that's the easiest upsells. And you can also charge them for a low monthly retainer to track both their personal and their business credit. So that could be option number one. Option number two would be points optimization, points and travel optimization programs. There's people like I've seen them inside of our school community that they charge over $10,000 for this offer, which is basically helping clients on how to maximize their points and then how to best redeem them for travel. So if you know about travel hacking, this is something that you can sell as a service. Also, you can talk about business credit, so how to build their tier 2 and tier 3 to get EIN only funding options in the future as well. And then capital development. So this one, it will depend if you're in a specific industry, if you have the knowledge into any specific topic. So if you know about crypto and you want to upsell them into a crypto offer, into a real estate or whatever else option that you can give them. And this one can also be by also referring it to someone that knows this, right? So referring it to another high ticket program where they can purchase a business or whatever the case may be. Okay. Then you can have kind of like what I was talking about, monthly membership programs. So school communities, for example, right, that you can sell them into, that it can be about travel hacking, business credit building, bookkeeping, or just having like private calls and resources to learn more about business credit in general. Okay. And then referring commissions. So you can refer them to bookkeepers, to CPAs, to tax people, and to other high ticket programs. And remember, you want to present 1 or 2 offers. You wouldn't want to present them too many, depending on the things that you have in your arsenal to be able to offer them. Okay. And then step number 9 would be to have a clean close. So at this point, you're officially complete with the funding phase. You now have all the tools, capital, and strategy to move forward confidently. And that's it. That's how you can offboard one of your clients. One thing that I forgot to mention here in our offer for the funding offer, when we charge the $6,000 program package, we normally offer a one inquiry sweep included. So whether they need it at first to get ready for funding or after the funding. So that unlocks another upsell, because if they use it at the beginning to get ready for funding, that means that they're going to have increase at the end of the funding round. So inquiry removal is something else that you can use as an upsell. Okay. Now, here's the this is basically like the full journey of how you can manage your clients.